What's up, boys and girls, guys and gals, moms and dads? Randy Gage back here with another edition of Chopping It Up with ... And it is today the lovely and talented Daniel K. Song. Welcome to the show.
Randy, thank you for having me. I am absolutely honored to be on this episode of Chopping It Up with you. Excited to just talk and chat and spend some time with you.
Yeah, let me get my volume level right. For you guys just watching for the first time, you're going to notice I'm not interviewing him. He's not interviewing me. We don't have an outline. It's a conversation that you guys out there in YouTube land get to eavesdrop in on. And it's just, I've put together some of the brilliant people in the profession, and I chop it up with them about any issue and personal stuff, success routines, formulas, stuff about the business, stuff that has nothing to do with the business. And we just go wherever it goes. So I guess the place to begin would be asking you, is it true that the only reason you do network marketing is so you can buy more collectibles to fill your office with there?
we gotta figure out clever ways to justify it as a business write-off, but I don't think I figured that out after still almost 15 years in this profession. But yeah, I mean, obviously besides the business, my hobbies and passions, I love collecting stuff. I'm a collector at heart. It started probably as a kid. You would go and get these McDonald's toys, and McDonald's does this perfectly, right? They give you a series of toys, maybe a Looney Tunes or a Disney thing comes out, or some cartoon that's popular at the time, and you have to get them all, right? There's a set of 8 or a set of 10, and then you start begging your parents, I got to go to McDonald's, and you're just trying to collect it. And if you can't even get the last one, then it just bums you out. And so I think very early on, I've had this sort of collector kind of mindset. And so whatever kind of I gravitated towards, at the time it was sports cards or comic books or coins or whatever it was, I would get obsessively deeply involved in collecting things. And that passion, really the hunt for the item, is more fun than the acquisition of the item. It's so interesting. And I remember sitting down with collector friends of mine, and they asked me, like, what's changed over the last, let's say, 2 decades since I was a kid to now collecting things. And I said, the 2 biggest things, number one is I have a little bit of discretionary money to go out and buy these cool things that I've always wanted. As a child, that wasn't the possibility. I had obviously allowance money, and that didn't get me very far. But the second thing is collectors have to realize the internet has made collecting 100 times easier, because I mean, Randy, I'm sure you know this, but back in the days, trying to collect a baseball card, you would have to go to local comic book stores or card stores. You would have to open packages and packs and hope that you would find that card that you're looking for to complete your set. And there's no way to know that if you had another collector friend 60 miles down the road from you, or a store in another state that had the exact card that you were looking for. And so the hunting process was much more difficult. And I think one of the reasons why it made collectibles so interesting. And for a while, I think in the early 2000s, collectibles took a sort of a dip in value, whether it was baseball cards, sporting cards, comic books, everything kind of had sort of plateaued or had gone backwards in value because the internet made it too easy to do it. But now, of course, since post-pandemic, all collectibles and anything that sort of had speculative investment opportunities just skyrocketed. And so I've seen my comic book collection probably 4 or 5x in value. Some of the toys that I have, even down to Lego sets. I know my buddy Eugene, when he buys Lego sets that he likes, he has a habit of buying 3 to 4 of the same identical sets. And he will open one and build one, and then he'll store away 2 or 3 unopened Lego sets as an investment. And there are YouTube channels just dedicated to what sets will become more of a better investment based on circulation numbers, the size. I mean, it's insane, the stuff that people do. And so it's a world that I love. I mean, obviously, I lean into really strongly right now into clearly Marvel comics and sort of the geek pop culture, which that also is so strange because, man, as growing up as a kid, I just remember being a part of sort of an outlier group, right? I wasn't the atypical, like I wasn't the jock archetype. I wasn't this archetype. I was the quiet, shy academic kid that was into comic books. And I mean, the truth was, you look at the stereotypes in the 80s and 90s, these are the kids that got picked on. These were the kids that nobody played with. These are the kids that kind of were seen as weird. And it's so interesting. And again, I was having a chat with Eugene about this. It's so interesting that in the 2000s and 2010 and 2020, being into this stuff is like cool. Like, like, oh my God, you're a Marvel guy. I'm like, yeah, but I get beat up for that when I was a kid.
Isn't it funny how that perception has changed? And a couple of things jump out at that. Yes, how the internet affected it. I never collected them. My collection, I started with coins and stamps because that was what you did way back in the day. And then when I got to be a teenager and I wanted pizza money and stuff, I sold off all of that. And when my mother found out that all the coins and all the stamps were gone, she wanted to kill me. But then I did comic books. Young kid, I did Matchbox and Hot Wheels and baseball cards. And it's like you say, you could buy, if I'm trying to get an Ernie Banks card for the Chicago Cubs, you could buy 875,000 packs of baseball cards and still not get that one you're looking for. So it's kind of a racket. I think in direct selling, we have to look at what are some of those ways to do that. Like, my mother was an Avon lady, and they came out with a cologne that was for men, and they made it in the bottle was the shape of a knight from the chess, and it was like the biggest sizzle product for them, and they ended up making the entire chessboard. And so I got to collect those, and they were because they were probably not as big as his water bottle, but probably 3/4 of that size, and they made a chessboard. And I don't know, we have so like, is there certain things that are certain categories you collect now, or you just collect anything collectible?
I don't think so there's friends of mine that collect strictly for value purposes, right? So they look at what has the best ROI, what has the best speculative values, and where they think it's going to go. For me, it's primarily based on the things that interest me. And so, like I said, it's been in the genre of Star Wars and Marvel just because that's what I love. And so within that area, I'll buy things that, one, are decorative. I just enjoy having it, like whether it's a collection of Iron Man armors back there on the wall, or, this life-size Grogu statue. So I'll buy things that obviously captivate my attention. But if it happens to be something that's highly sought after, like a limited edition thing, then I will go out of my way to try to look for that. And so I think it's right now, the thing that has most of my resources, in the world of collecting, probably is Legos, comic books, and like these limited edition collectible pieces, like, again, like some of the stuff that you see in the background. Those are probably the three most things that I'm going after. I do have still a box of, again, childhood comics, a box of childhood sports cards that I'm sure they're worth something. But I don't give it as much. I don't actively add to that collection the way I do Legos and some of the Star Wars and Marvel collectibles right now.
I have a client and friend, a guy named Dave Jordan, who is in South Dakota. Yeah, South Dakota. And he is the king of collectibles. He's a network marketing guy, been in the business for decades. Now he's actually looking at starting up something with collectibles. He has literally hundreds of millions of dollars worth of collectibles, and potentially a couple billion.
Jeez.
I mean, he has like, I don't quote these as examples, but I mean, real examples like these, like he might have 10,000 rookie Ichiro baseball cards, 10,000 rookie Mike Trout. He'll have 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 Michael Jordan cards.
Yeah.
He will have, I mean, the biggest names in every sport, every movie, every television show. I mean, you know, I was at his place. First of all, his house is, I mean, he has like basically it's a safe room where he's got, you know, valuable silver and gold and stuff like that. But then some of those collectibles, and then he has warehouses. I mean, literally semi truckloads, and he's just now kind of categorizing it because of this new venture he's looking to do. I was on with him last week. I mean, it's just crazy. And I, you know, I think there's a lot of successful people like us that get drawn to that, because I think there's an obsessive element to our personality. So when, like you say, if the happy box set is 7 items and you only have 5, I mean, you simply cannot rest.
Yep.
Until, right, and it's just, I don't know, it's a fascinating psychological dynamic. And so I got away from it because I did my sabbatical, and I just said, this is it. I have too much material items in my life. I sold or gave away everything I owned, that I'm just going to travel the world for a couple of years. And so, yeah, I had Savage Sword of Conan comic book collection. And I mean, stuff that, you know, was really, some stuff that's really valuable, and other stuff but it's just like, I needed to move on. I had too much. I felt like I didn't own my possessions. My possessions owned me. Some people have heard the story, or, you know, I had some workers renovating my condo. And so I had a couple of watches that like one of the things I collected was watches. I had hundreds of watches. And yes, I had $11 Swatch watches and $20, you know, whatever that store in the mall is. But I mean, I had $30,000, $50,000, $80,000 ones too. And I was moving from my baseball caps, looking for I joined a new team and had a different uniform color scheme. So I'm like, okay, do I have a red hat somewhere in here? And I move, and then I have a couple watches, like a Piaget and another one, you know, and it's like, oh my God, these 2 watches, they're worth like, one was 50 grand, one was, I don't know how much. And I'd never worn them.
Yeah.
I had forgot I bought them.
Yeah.
And I had hidden them when I thought, you know, I had the workers in my condo, and I thought, you know, let's not be tempting anybody. Let's move these away. You know, I have some in safe deposit box, but I was like, let me just, and then I forgot about them. And I realized that, you know, to spend that kind of money and never wear them, it didn't bring joy to my life.
100%.
And that caused me to do a whole rethinking of my priorities. And that's what set me on that sabbatical, which I will to this day maintain that is the most beneficial personal growth experience I've ever done in my life.
Yeah, it's so good. I mean, there's so many things you were saying about, one, it instead of you owning that hobby or that passion, it turning around and owning you. I had to go through my own cycles of purging and letting go of certain things, even within just the realm of collectibles, just because it got way too consuming. You know, one, it's because markets and businesses, they exploit the collector behavior, right? They know you're looking for these things. So they start releasing all of these quote unquote exclusives that you can only get at Target, or you can only get by going to a convention. And so it probably in the last 10 years, the thing that really took off for me was these like Funko Pops. They're these like bobblehead toys, and they're out of Seattle. And I mean, if you watch a documentary on Funko, it's a company that just skyrocketed in value. I mean, these guys came out with these really, really cute collectible bobbleheads, and I got a few of them for like presents. 10 or 12 years ago. I think they only had a series of a couple Star Wars figures and a couple Marvel figures. And so I was like, hey, I want to get a couple Star Wars guys. And I started with like a Yoda, a Luke, a Darth Vader, the typical core figures. And now the Star Wars line alone probably has well over 1,000 different bobbleheads. And so you could see how if you got hooked on that stuff, then you would start buying everything. And then I would have to go to different conventions around the country because they would only release them at those conventions. And so, they call it the chase or the hunt, right? So that's why they even call it, they literally call certain collectibles chase collectibles, right? Because you have to chase for them. And man, I started just really doing a mental audit of not only the time, the money that I was spending, because I would justify, right? For example, I would have teams in, let's say, like New York. And so I would kind of try to time. I was like, okay, I got to be at this New York con to get this figure. I better start doing some meetings and booking some schedules in New York so I can support my team there and then go to the con and then come back home. And I mean, I literally filled one of our bedrooms full of the stuff. And at some point I was just like, you know what, this will be a never ending cycle. And so I came to that realization, and I remember purging probably close to 2,000 figures. I mean, you got to imagine each of these figures occupies a space about the size of half a shoebox. So it'll fill a room real quickly. So we had an unusable room in the house with just boxes and boxes of stuff, clearly figures that I couldn't even enjoy because they were all stacked on top of another. So it's not like you can even enjoy them. And so, yeah, I sold it, I purged it and took the money and, gave some of it to my parents, gave some, we put it away for our kids' college funds. I mean, it was kind of something that, and it felt good. I mean, it was hard to do when I listed it for sale, but it felt also like there was a sense of regaining a little bit of freedom, right? And that's really cool. And I think when you spoke on the obsessive quality and I found that really interesting about like high performance, like achievers in our space, or just in the world of entrepreneurship. Like there's almost a fanatical, obsessive quality that these entrepreneurs have. It almost seems like one of those X factors or the positive anomalies, if you will. And I mean, I look back in my journey in network marketing and direct sales, and it's like even something as simple as a rank system. It wasn't, for me, it was never about the clout or the prestige of being a diamond or a galactic star emperor. It was never about the clout that came with the title, but it was the sequence of making sure I had every pin. Like it was something as simple as that. And I remember in one company, I joined and I had a good booming year. And so I'd skipped like a handful of ranks, like for example, like let's say from a beginner rank all the way to a diamond rank. And I'd skip, let's say, 6 or 7 levels. And so the company only recognizes every, let's say 60 days or 90 days. And so they sent out the diamond pin, but they skipped the 6 other pins.
Big mistake.
And for me, more than celebrating the diamond pin, I would call their recognition team. And I said, is there any way you could send me the 6 other pins? And like, why, Daniel? You're at this level. I said, it's not the level. It's I need to have all of those collectible pieces. And so, whether it's a company lanyard, and that gets me committed to going to all of our events. I know we justify the value of live events because you learn and you grow. And yes, that works too. For me, it's something as simple as collecting lanyards. And, like whether it's Mastermind, I'll have a 2012, a 2013, a 2014, a 2015, and I don't want to miss one. And so it gets me hooked. And so whether it's ranks or whether it's event passes or lanyards or whatever it is, it draws me in.
People have, this is the thing, when I'm working with companies, I'm always fighting with them about comp plans and the recognition program that goes with the comp plans, because you have to have a career path, and each rank has to be, and nobody does it right, almost nobody, because what they do is they copy Amway, and let's say they'll look at Amway and say, okay, they call them pearls and rubies and emeralds, we'll call them silver and gold and platinum, and it might be Amway, it might be New Skin, it might be Herbalife. They'll pick some legacy company, just adopt their comp plan and change names. And they don't understand that every comp plan has to be designed by the number of products you have, what's the price of the product, what kind of, a lot of the comp plan is driven by consumption. By the distributors themselves, right? Arbonne people buy Arbonne skincare. Rodan and Fields people buy Rodan and Fields skincare, right? but how much can you buy in a month? This is kind of an advantage that companies with larger product lines have over one product companies. Your one product may be an amazing sizzle product, but if it's the only thing, how much can people consume of it each month? So you got to build your comp plan by, okay, what would an average family of four, that's just how I structure it. What would an average family of four use for monthly consumption?
Yeah.
And then let's build the qualification criteria by that. And then you want to reward, obviously, the right behavior. You can't reward people with headhunter fees or you're illegal. You don't want to reward them for stockpiling up, front loading people, because you're going to get in regulatory trouble there. And you can't make the ranks too. Some companies have a thing where, let's say you need 10,000 points. Next rank is 20,000 points. Next rank is 50,000 points. Next rank is 75. And then the next one is 200. Well, no, that jump from 75, 200 is two, or if it's, 100,000, 250, 500, a million, but then it's 2 million. Because, you kill people because you always want that person saying, okay, that leader, somebody who's doing it full time now, they've made it their profession, and they're saying, oh my, like me, right? I was a dishwasher, for God's sake. I'm a high school dropout. So when I made $10,000 a month, I thought, this is it. This is the pinnacle of my, and this is back when $10,000 was a lot of money. Right. And so I say, oh my God, I'm the richest person I know.
Yeah.
I know movie stars made more money, and, Lee Iacocca at Chrysler made more money, or, Oprah Winfrey or whatever. But for me, I didn't know a single person in the world who, in person, I never met anyone who made $10,000 a month. And so it's really easy for us to get, for everybody in our profession to get to that. Okay, I got the drink out of the coconut money. But if the comp plan is designed right, when you're at 10,000 a month, you're looking at saying, wow, so I'm making 10,000 a month. I have 5, pearl lines, or 5 diamond lines, or 5 VP lines, or whatever they're called in your company. And you say, if I had 6, I'd be getting $18,000 a month. And it draws you to that. And then when you get to 18,000, you're like, oh my God, this is the most money I've ever. But you look and say, wow, if I got 2 more lines, I would literally go from 18,000 a month to $40,000 a month. It's that big of a magnetic pull on your goals and your income, because, and that's what you want. That just keeps people. So it's always the hardest part for me. I design a lot of comp plans, and that's my hardest part, is picking the speed bumps along the way, or, the benchmarks along the way, and getting them so that, because we do need to honor our promise, because we always make the promise, you can create residual walkaway income. And that needs to be true. That's, you can always tell when a company is trying to get rid of their top income earners, right? There are people in our profession, unfortunately, but there are owners of companies, CEOs, who say, there's nobody worth $100,000 a month. There just isn't. Once they're at that point, they've brought you the majority of the people they're ever going to bring. And if you get rid of them, you'll keep most of those people. So let's find a way to terminate them. Let's find an infraction. And sometimes what they do is they change the comp plan and say, okay, you're only going to get paid if you sponsor 12 new people every month, 12 new customers, 20 new customers. Well, that's great for 2 months or 3 months, because they're sponsoring their dog, their cat, their parakeet, their dead aunt, their dead mother, but after 2 months, they run out of pets and dead people. And then if you have a team of 50,000 people, you can't afford to sponsor 12 people a month. because you'll destroy your organization, because your organization needs you to be a leader managing the infrastructure. Yes, you should always be setting the example and being, recruiting yourself and with, but that ratio of that changes, and comp plans need to reflect that, and ranks need to reflect that, right? Because if you're sitting there and you're double diamond and people are walking across the stage who are triple diamond, well, that's what you want. And maybe, if I'm the double diamond and I see people, and somebody on my team, one of my people walks across as a triple diamond, I'm grinding my molars. Okay. There's half of me that says, I am so proud of Julio for doing that. He's my guy. I'm so glad. But there's also part of me saying, how can I have somebody under me at a higher rank than me? And that's part of that obsessive, I think leaders in our profession, we are driven, and a big part of it is the dynamics of psychology, like that stuff.
100%. It's so good. I mean, look, when you join a company or you're new, you may not be able to identify. I'm sure when you look at a comp plan, Randy, if someone said, hey, take a look at my comp plan, you could probably immediately identify some of the challenging points or some of the friction points where you're like, this is going to be a little bit difficult. And so I go through my own experience where you demonstrated perfectly where, it goes 10,000 to 20,000 to 30,000, 40,000. So there's this progressive feeling where I feel like I'm incrementally growing and I'm incrementally being recognized for that effort, which makes the progress and the journey exciting for me. It keeps me engaged. Then you get to a point where the comp plan has this sort of erratic, just no rhyme or reason. It's like, hey, let's triple the qualification to get to the next level. And I mean, on the flip side, as a devil's advocate, I get it. They really want the top 1% to truly exponentially grow. But, progressive growth doesn't happen. I mean, even weight gain, when you go to the gym, it doesn't work that way. You don't lift 20 pounds, 30 pounds, 40 pounds, and then jump to 200 pounds. You go 60, 70, 80, 100. And if anything, if you really want to microanalyze it, after 100, you're going 102, 103. The micro growth is smaller because you recognize at that height, even small growth is immense growth, because you're fighting against every physics known to man. I mean, retention issues, attrition issues, time, management of organizations. It's just that much harder to do. And so I find myself in a position where the next rank, and again, of course, the person might argue, well, Daniel, you're not working hard. You didn't earn that. And yes, I understand that on again, as a superficial discussion, but psychologically, at some point, if I keep hitting a ceiling and not being able to break to the next rank, at some point, I'm going to start talking myself off that. I'm going to say it's not important, it's not necessary. And then you also discover weird loopholes where in one of the comp plans that I was in, I realized that there was no financial incentive to really get to the next rank other than a title. I had realized that.
Yeah, sometimes that they're in their blind spots that.
And so there were, because of certain metrics that they wanted to measure the metric of, let's say, certain type of volume in your organization, specifically down specific legs, but the comp plan still rewards you regardless of where the volume comes in. So there are times where I'm out earning physical money compared to some of the highest rank categories in our company. And so it was weird to watch a category of ranks that were above me and watch 10 or 12 people walk across that stage. Yet when they recognize the top income earners, I would be within the top 5 because I was out earning majority of that class, because there was a sort of a friction point that they didn't see originally, And so I think it's so important for people, especially understanding that there is a psychological element that kind of hooks you. And I hate going back to collectibles and games, but this is just how I just see it happening in everyday life. And me and my wife, we're not Vegas people. We're not into the nightlife scene. We don't club, we don't gamble, but we love going to the arcades. We recently had this anniversary and we were like, hey, let's just go to the arcades. We love playing ticket games, little coin games, win the prizes. And it's something that me and my wife have been doing since we first started long distance dating. And it's stuff that we still do now. One of my wife's favorite type of arcade games is the coin pusher game. I don't know, Randy, if you've seen it, where you drop in the coins, they fall in, and then the little shovel pushes the coins to the edge. And the whole tension is getting those coins to drop at the edge, right? And you're just like, one more coin. It has the same addictive principles of slot machines. It's the same thing. It's slot machines without the legalities of gambling.
Right.
Now, what's really funny is one of the variants of this game has these little tokens. So there's the coins or marbles, and you're pushing marbles. That's the basic premise of the game. But on top of the bed of marbles is these either tokens or cards. So this game happened to be a SpongeBob SquarePants game, and they had these collectible cards. And if you collected all 10 cards, your ticket payout becomes like exponentially more. So yeah, I mean, like the payout is worth it. That's why you're there. And so you're playing, but the mechanics is really simple because you're putting more marbles in and it pushes those cards closer and closer. Eventually you'll get it. There's no rocket science. It's just a matter of time. But whether you need card number 1, card number 6, or card number 10, the difficulty is incrementally the same, meaning the achievement is the same. You just got to commit and you got to put in the work, right? The marble, the marble, the marble, the marble. And the more you're consistent, the more you dedicate yourself to it, you're going to eventually get the 10 cards. Now, the way they get you, though, is the frequency of those cards coming out into play, right? So the common cards come out let's say, every other turn. But there's maybe 1 or 2 cards in the stack of 10 that only come out after 50 turns. So that's how they get you. It's not that the difficulty of achievement gets harder. It's the rarity in which the circulation of it. And so even a comp plan can be designed in a way where the behavior is incremental so that someone can feel a consistent ability to achieve and grow. The payouts get exponentially larger because they know that that's why it hooks you to the end game. And all it needs to be is just a frequency of timing that changes. And it works. I mean, it's shown in these simple games, the psychology of why you spend 50 or 100 bucks sitting in front of these machines that really, and I always joke around with my wife, we play these games, we have fun. We go to the ticketing counter, we exchange it for a plushy doll or a cheap, like toy. We come home and we feel good. We feel very gratified and we feel like, wow, that was awesome. And then I think about it, I'm like, babe, that was $100 Pikachu doll that we just won. I mean, we could have gone on eBay and bought that for 20 bucks, but we spent $100 buying the same doll, but we felt so good about it. Like we achieved something. And my wife always says it best. It's like, we're not paying for the doll. We're paying for the enjoyment and the memories, which is true, all that aside, but it is that's how much it gets you to engage. You almost ignore the difficulties and the logic. And I think that's good to do. Besides collecting, I run a lot. And you have to almost suspend logic when you're running distance running. Because if you start thinking about the distance or whether you're mountain climbing or running, like you'll start talking yourself out of things, right? And so you have to just look at it as like the next city block, the next block, the next block, the next block. And if you can just push it out and look at it as incremental progress, before you know it, you've already done 12K, 15K, 20K, 30K, right? And so that's what's exciting about progressive journeys like that.
The psychology, if people only realized how important, when you saw the chopping it up I did with Flaco, Eric Gamio, and he told the story I told the story of him, which he told me with his mother-in-law, who's the psychologist watching me speak in Panama, and saying, you never told me he's a psychologist. But of course, the payoff of that story is if I tell you humans behave in this way, and you have 25 double-blind research studies conducted by Harvard, Stanford, and whatever university, you better bet on me, because, I have been in the crack houses of Liberty City and National City and Opalaka and done drug deals. And you either learn what causes people to be, how they act, how they telegraph their actions, or you go out of there in a body bag, right? And of course, in direct selling, the psychology is everything. So if the company says, okay, so diamond is 100,000 points, and double diamond is 200,000 points, and triple diamond is 300,000 points, and quadruple diamond, we're going to make that the freak of nature one. We're going to make that 1,000,000 points. The lady who gets to triple diamond has no real psychological driver to go to quadruple diamond, because she's at 300,000. 1,000,000 is more than 3 times what she's had to do. She says, okay, I definitely want to do that. that's on my to-do list, but she's not going to be motivated to move toward it this month. Whereas if the quadruple diamond is a doable thing, and it's like the same kind of the career path it's been, she's motivated to go after it sooner. One of the top secret $1 million tips I have is I get everybody in my team to set up their auto ships, or if there's no auto ship, to do their orders by the 5th of every month. And we just hammer that in every training. We hammer that in the culture, because if everybody does or if you get the vast majority of people doing their order in the first 5 days of the month, now somebody looks at this and says, okay, to be a gold director, I need 40,000 points, and I already have 26,000 on the 5th of the month or the 8th of the month. I think I can go gold this month. But if you leave it, and particularly like my teams in Latin America, that there's this culture of literally 60 to 70% of the business is done on the last day of the month. The guy or gal who wakes up the day before the end of the month and realize she's got 26,000 points and gold is 40, says, well, I can't get to gold this month, I'm going to do it next month. If she sees that number as a doable thing on the 6th of the month or the 8th of the month, they're going to go for it. And it creates stronger rank advancement. And it's the same exact products with the same exact people. The difference is that psychological dynamic of how achievable do they perceive this next rank, and same thing with contests and promotion and anything. How believable is the achievement?
I think it comes down to like 2 words for me always, whether it's a contest, an incentive trip, like a rank, or even a prize in an arcade machine. I call it striking distance. Am I within a striking distance? Or, in football, I think they call it the red zone. If you're, we know when you're in those areas, you got to turn it up because you're that much closer. It's that much more statistically possible. Your confidence level is higher. Your adrenaline gets higher. And so it's you were mentioning the 1st of the month because I think you were kind of pinning it, bookending it on a 30-day cycle. Let's say someone watching this has a 1 week, like a weekly reset to their comp plan. Same thing. You want it on a Monday or the opening of the week as close as possible, because then it gives you the longest runway if you psychologically buy into your striking distance. If you recognize the striking distance on the 11th hour of the cutoff period, the odds of that happening are not there, and they're going to squander that whole week away. And so it's really interesting because I've been in 2 different companies, both were weekly comp plan cycles. And so I saw one company handling it one way, and there are pros and cons to it each. One company would do a weekly reset, but they would run all of the auto ship profiles for that week, all on the beginning of the day, right? So let's say the comp plan opened up on Sunday, they would run all the auto ships for that week on that Sunday, so that Monday morning when I logged into my back office, let's say I was going to have 2,000 points come in throughout the week, I saw that on a Monday. And that psychologically already allowed me to sort of map the week out and say, okay, my next rank is at 3,000. I'm already 60% of the way there. I got to go. I'm in a striking distance mode, and gives me a 5-day, 6-day runway to achieve that rank. And then I'm in another company that has, again, the same weekly cutoffs, but instead they run the auto ship profiles in real time. So if you signed up on the 1st, it runs on the 1st. If you signed up on the 2nd, it runs on the 2nd. And so you're just seeing incremental growth every day. And sure, it is organic. So on the consumer side, the benefit for the consumer is they have a full 28 days or a full 30 days before their auto ship profiles run. The downside for the achiever and the runner and the performer is that they have no ability to truly gauge, their sort of striking distance. You know what I mean? Right. Now, I guess, an analytical person could sit there and go through reports and look at, I know sometimes they have projection reports, but it's not the same as seeing a definitive number in front of you. You know what I mean? It's so different,
100%. Yeah. And the distinction there is for retail customers, you don't have a choice that they need to, if they're going to get a monthly order, it's what you say. If they started on the 2nd, they're going to get it the 2nd. If they're started on the 17th, they're going to get it on the 17th. You need to honor that. But with your distributors, those are the ones you set up, those that, yeah, if it's the month, by the 5th of the month, if it's by the week, that first day of the week, that psychology is really powerful.
Mm.
What do you have on your list that you wanted to chat about? You got something to, what topic are you tugging at you?
You know, it's so funny watching, you know, Art talk about it, and just like, obviously it was a theme at our event this past year at Mastermind too. And it's just, you know, the undeniable fact that we are looking at, whether we're in a recessionary, you know, economy, whether we're heading into it. I mean, regardless of where you want to put that pin drop, it's undeniable that we do see some storm clouds brewing on the horizon, you know. And I love the fact that we're talking about very relevant things of, you know, what are we going to do to pivot? What challenges, but what opportunities do we see on the horizon? And, you know, there was a concept that you were sharing that just obviously it's one that I've heard through the 2008, 2009 mortgage collapse calamity. And now we're seeing it again, which is during challenging times in the economy, there's sort of an inverse relationship to our profession, where people of, you know, quality, high caliber people that traditionally wouldn't look at direct sales or network marketing as an opportunity, they now look, because they're looking for a quick pivot because their industry is starting to dry up. I remember I was in another company, but I remember watching the inception of Monavi go on their sort of rocket ship parabola. And I remember, especially being in Southern California, there were a few leaders. I mean, I know that there was the East Coast team with, I think, Brig Hart and some of the guys out in Florida, but there was another group of young, and I mean young, they were at that time, they were probably in their 30s. Really, really sharp entrepreneurs. They were all coming out of mortgage, real estate, and lending, right? So it's all part of that the mortgage class. So their industry was shriveling up. And these are guys that used to get paid commission. So they were making great money. They were driving the Ferraris. They were living in the beautiful Newport Beach houses. And that industry just shut down. And so these guys, they're psychologically unemployable. They're not going to turn around and go work at a McDonald's or for minimum wage or a salary, because they're used to making these big money. And so right around that time is also when Monavi was just starting to take off, and they joined. And these guys were probably the other half of why Monavi went to, you know, close to $1 billion or whatever they went to. And so, you know, you look at these guys who typically were, you know, doing so well in their profession that they would, if I had gone to them with the Monavi opportunity 6 months earlier, they probably would have laughed in my face and said, ha, you know, we're going to Newport and eating at Mastro's every night, 6 nights a week. Like, why would we ever look, you know? But 6 months later, when the economy, the tides had turned, now they're like, okay, like, we see it, we'll do it. And there were big reasons why I think that we saw big growth in our profession. And I'm sure Monavi is just one case study. It just happened to be the one that was in my peripheral. I'm sure we saw that similar effect happening across multiple companies in the early 2010, 2011, 12. What's interesting about this next dip, if you will, is one, I do see that happening. It's inevitable that you're going to get people with displaced incomes and displaced careers that are looking for a soft place to land with high income earning potential, which direct sales has that. What is interesting, what I'd like to kind of pick your brain about is, how does that change now that we are, this time around, we also have the competition of a traditional gig economy, which seems to also emulate a lot of I get that an Uber driver is not going to get a Ferrari or get to $1 million income, but if somebody's psychologically in a place where they're like, I gotta pay for, like, one really important one, like, I don't know if it's across the nation, but I know natural gas prices have skyrocketed. I mean, Southern California, Edison is predicting everyone's bills are 3 to 4 times more. My average utility bill, gas in my house, you know, for the size of home it is, on average, even during the wintertime with our heaters running and everything like that, might be $300 a month. You know what I mean? It's nothing astronomical. I got my bill last month. It was like almost $1,400. There are articles of, like, for example, Chinese restaurants in downtown LA, in Chinatown, that says our gas bill was $15,000 because they're running their high heat woks to cook their food. And they're like, we can't do it on an induction stove. We can't do it on, the woks are the way we cook. And so we can't change that. And so when people are looking for an immediate way to fill a gap or a hole in their ship that they see leaking, how do you feel like the gig economy is going to affect that? Because I feel like that's the quicker place to pivot for a quick remedy for an income gap. But network marketing traditionally seems to be more of a long play. It has been. I don't know if that's going to change now, but it's always, Daniel, do it consistently, do it right, And if you do this over the next 5 or 10 or 12 years and do it right, you can have walk-away residual income. But I feel like that may not be the message people want to hear when they can't pay for their gas bill this month.
100%. You haven't seen it yet. I had the benefit of it because I did a chopping up with Dana Collins that last week that will come out like a couple days after we're recording this. So by the time anyone is watching this, the Dana Collins one will be up. But some of the things, and we were talking about this very issue, and the couple of things. One is, I remember, you know, my first check with the Amway Corporation was like, you know, $3.21 or something. And, you know, my sponsor made a big deal out of that, right? And then, you know, your next check was like $7, and everybody bragged about this, that yes, okay, let me, because you'd have the, you know, the OG original, you know, the gangsters, Bill Britt and Dexter Yeager, and they would talk about that their first check was, you know, 72 cents or $4 or whatever. And it showed the character and the determination and how they stuck with it. And now they were flying around in private jets and living in these palatial estates. But that shit stopped working by 1980s. Okay, that shit stopped working by the 1990s. You know, you tell somebody, yeah, you're going to make $3 your first month, and then $11 your second month, and then $20 your third month. They're like, get the fuck out of here. You know, they don't want to even look at you. And I realized, okay, and so when I was working with companies, I started saying, okay, the reason you're losing people to these Ponzi schemes and pyramids is because they're showing people how to make big money quickly. You can't compete with that. Don't try. Okay. If you're working with someone and they're a plumber's apprentice and you show them, here's what the 2-year pathway looks like to become a successful plumber, because they can make very nice income, right? You can't compare that to a bank robber. A bank robber is going to make in 5 minutes what the plumber makes in 10 years. Okay. But the bank robber has a really bad retirement program. Okay. He just does. So you can't compare with that. But what I started, you know, when I was working with companies on the comp plan is, hey, we've got to create some quick start bonus or fast start bonus, some kind of name like that. This is why companies went to weekly pay plans instead of monthly. Back in the day, nobody did a weekly thing. That was crazy. Yeah. It was only when the scam binaries started the weekly pay plan, and then other serious legitimate companies started adopting weekly comp plans because they needed to compete with those guys. And to these days, most new companies start with a weekly, because, you know, when I grew up, my mother would spend an hour and a half making dinner. We always had salad. We always had meat. We always had a potato. We always had a vegetable. She might do a crock pot thing where she was cooking it all day while she was at work. You know what I mean? Today, you got a woman sitting in front of a microwave, pushing 90 seconds and saying, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. Or she's pulling through a drive-through window, getting it at Boston Market, right? Attention spans have changed. And this holds true for the money thing. People are not going to wait 6 months to get to a couple $100s worth of income. You've got to find some way. So you've got to create sample packages, initial offers. You've got to be willing to lose money on activation orders sometimes, or break even on activation orders, so that you can juice up the commissions. And then you got to be really, really maniacal about safeguards, because if you show them a way they can game the system, they will game the system. That's just the nature of human nature. So you've got to show that this really only is for a verifiable new account, and it's only for their initial order. So you create a special package pricing and PV, SV, whatever the point value barometer you use in your company, but you give someone a chance that they could make at least something. So that's one of the things. The other thing I was telling Dana is, before, years ago, if you told me you were doing some kind of side gig thing, I'd say, well, you know what, just go do that, because I don't really have time to work with people like you who aren't serious. If you're not willing to make this commitment, I'm not willing to put my time with you. And I'm sorry, I don't want to be mean. It's nothing personal. It's just a business decision. I would never do that today. I recognize today a huge part of my team is doing 4 different, they're influencers selling t-shirts on Instagram. They work a couple of days a week at a coffee shop. They're driving for Domino's. They might be delivering for Uber Eats or driving Lyft or whatever. And that's the culture today. And so I've got to be open and welcoming to that and celebrate that. That great. He's working 2 days a week driving Uber, and that's giving him something. And now he's given me that 10 hours a week that I want from him. And then over a period of time, I've got to help him or her figure out, okay, when you don't pick up the businessman at the airport and drive him home with Uber, you don't get paid. When you don't pick up the drunk at the nightclub at 3 a.m. who's puking in the back seat of your Corolla and, scoop him out of the car when you get him to his place, you're not getting paid. But when you build some customers with my deal, they're going to reorder every month. This is what did Art call it? The break the zero income at the mastermind event, right? When you can show them, now we're starting to get some residual, and you got 7 people who buy your Sunrider products every month. You've got, 42 people you've signed up with Utility Warehouse that have their, internet or gas or electric or whatever, and they get it from, over in the UK. Or whatever the company, you get those 7 customers, and then the 15 customers, and then they got, they start to realize that, well, if I don't get a new ride on the Uber app, I'm not making any money today. It's the same, I love talking to real estate people, right? Real estate people have good sales skills. They have initiative. They have to be self-responsible, because you've got to do that. So I love talking about our business, because I can tell them, you do understand that you wake up every morning unemployed, because they do. Anybody who's on commission only, they wake up every morning unemployed. If that real estate agent, if she doesn't sell a house today, she's not making money. Now I get, she might make 25 grand selling one house, but she doesn't know when that 25 grand is going to come. And when she gets it, she doesn't know when the next one's going to come. Yeah. She doesn't, it's when you first become a real estate agent. Okay. So you tell everybody, and then your mom and your sister and your brother-in-law and anybody who's going to buy a house, of course, they're going to buy it from you. So you're covered the first year. Your friends who would feel guilty if they bought or sold a house without calling you. But after that, you got to get out in the real world, and you need new customers all the time. And same thing, whether it's the influencers and the coffee shop people and the Lyft and Uber drivers and all that, you got to show, hey, what I've got here is residual. I got no problem if you're driving Uber 2 days a week. You're working at Starbucks 2 days a week. You're delivering Domino's pizza 3 days, 3 nights a week. Great. I understand. You do what you got to do. Take care of your family, make money. I'm here. I'm your coach. I'm going to be working with you, and we're going to develop your residual. But, you saw in my last book, to me, I just call it leveraged sales. What I call it now, because I believe those are the two elements. And that's what makes us unique than any other business in the world. Great. If you are, you know, Camila Cabello, and you can create songs like that, you got leverage. You don't have to go to everybody's house and sing it to them. You record it in the studio once, put it up on iTunes, and you got leverage. But if you're not Camila and you can't do that, I can show you how to do that in our space. I can show you how you can get the same leverage that Mark Cuban and Elon Musk and Oprah Winfrey and Shakira and The Rock and the wealthy, you know, all of the titans, you know, go back and read Think and Grow Rich, and, you know, Rockefeller and Carnegie and Edison and Ford and Firestone. What was the magic ingredient for every one of those people? Was leverage. I've got a way for you, without a bunch of money, without a bunch of experience, without a bunch of education, where you can unleash the power of leverage. And because there are, again, like I said, there's people who are good at sales. There's great real estate salespeople, great insurance salespeople, car salespeople. They don't get leverage. If we can show them, hey, we're going to tone down your sales skills. We're going to dial up your teaching skills. We're going to put you in a different business model. This is not sales. This is leverage sales. Boom. And that's what we got to do with all those other side gig stuff, because that's the thing. I just truly believe, you know, you got to own what we have.
100%.
You know, we were, you know, I was talking to a company that I consult with, and it's time for the contract renewal. And so it was about $400,000 was the fee for me. And then I have these incentive clauses. If their sales reach certain amount, I get these, you know, big one-time payments. So, you know, we have a $500,000 payment, $1 million payment. And, you know, they're saying, if I have to write you a check for, I'm like, you would be crazy not to want to write me that check for $1 million, right? And so, but anyway, so we were talking about the fees, and I was like, you know, I'm sorry, I'm not going to negotiate this. You know, you can't tell me any better way than you could spend $400,000 than giving it to me. I'm sorry. If you tell me I can get the best vice president of marketing in the entire profession for $400,000, I'm say, great. They're not as good as me. They say, for $400,000, I can build a new factory to make my products. And say, great, that factory isn't as good as me. With $400,000, I could do promotions and ads and contests to recruit new people. Great, that $400,000 isn't as good as hiring me, because I'm going to do stuff all across the board. I'm going to train your field people. I'm going to teach them skill sets. They're going to learn how to duplicate. And I'm talking about millions and millions and millions of dollars of sales. I'm going to help you create recruiting videos and audios and catalogs and brochures and your website and your social media campaigns and your mobile app. And you can't, if you know, if you want to bargain for that 400, go talk to someone else. There's lots of consultants you can hire that will work for anything. They will sell their soul, right? I think every distributor in our business has to have that same attitude. You got to know what you got. You have this business that, God, you know, I started 2 restaurants and lost them both. And each time I lost what to me was a fortune. It was all the money in the world I put into those restaurants, and I lost them both because all the money in the world that I had, which I lost, wasn't enough to start the business. I was undercapitalized each time. And whether you want to open a dry cleaner, a diner, a mom and pop retail shop, you know, you want a McDonald's franchise, what is that? You need 2 million to do that today. You want a Subway friend? What do you need? 300,000, 400,000? Midas muffler shop. I mean, what how many, and then it's like, I've got 3 subways within, a softball throw of me here.
Yeah.
And any one of the 3, I'm going to go in at Monday at 11 a.m. and the owner is going to be behind the counter making my sandwich. He has 0 leverage.
Yeah, 100%.
Right? So we have this without the big investment, work from home, set your own hours, choose the people you work with. If you live here in the United States, it's the most amazing tax benefits you could ever hope for. Travel opportunities. The 2 things I think are the sexiest is there's no limit to how much you want to earn.
Yeah.
There's no, hey, you've exceeded the pay scale of this category, you're now the supervising nurse on this floor. The maximum salary for the chain of hospitals is this much. You can't get a range. That's it. That's as high as you can go. We don't have any limits. You can literally go as big as your dreams are. And the other one is you become successful by helping other people reach success. Tell me where you get that anywhere else. And it's like, to do all this, you need $40, $50, or $100 for a distributor kit. And you should place an activation order from somewhere from $75 to $500. And maybe it's the super deluxe, everything but the kitchen sink package, and it's $1,000. It's like, you better own that. You better stop begging people, stop chasing people, stop thinking, who am I going to sell this stuff to? Or who am I going to get to sell this stuff for me? You got to be thinking, who are the most busy, most ambitious, most successful people I know that could crush it with this thing? And I would be bringing this blessing into their life.
Yeah.
That's the attitude we got to have,
Yeah. So good. I mean, it's, that little tail end about who's the most successful. It's so weird because people have this like myth that successful, busy people wouldn't take a look at what we do. And that's actually like, look, not everybody's in the mind space to be open to looking, but sometimes some of the best people are the most successful, the ones that have already a lot on their plate. Because 2 things. Number one, they already have like it in their DNA, right? They have the achiever mindset. So 1, you're getting somebody who's mentally, emotionally fortified for the journey that they need to go on for success. Number 2 is when they have a lot on their plate, they're also looking for ways to always optimize their time. And so like you just talked about here, like we have this thing called leverage packaged in a beautiful like program. And to a busy person, that it feels like freedom, like you said, it's the Subway owner who has to run his own shop. I know business owners that make great money, but they're not employees, but it's almost like they are. They're there 40, 80 hours a week. They have to open shop. They have to close shop. They make great money. And they're just thinking, how do I earn my time back despite the great income I'm making? And now we have that opportunity to do it. So that's super awesome. The other thing is, you were talking about right at the beginning of that piece where you were like, hey, we got to figure out ways the $3 first check story is not going to work, And I get it. Look, if we had 2 scenarios where, let's say we were looking at a scratch built company today, right? I mean, we know this, Randy. If I gave you a project and said, hey, Randy, I want to launch a company in 6 months. Can you help me design an optimized comp plan for today's economic challenges and strengths and characters? I'm sure you could design something that like fits like a perfect fitted glove, right? I mean, it's got the sweet spot for the upfront money. It gets the gig people to say, yes, I can drive Uber, but I can also do this new company and make $300, $400, $500 a month right away, whatever it is, right? What happens to a company, let's say like that, like quote unquote, the Amways of our industry, the people that are already 10, 15, 20 years in, and their comp plan struggles to make these pivots because 1, we all know the mechanics of a comp plan, and you can't just create money to pay out. It's got to come from somewhere. You gotta rob Peter to pay Paul or whatever. You got to take away from this mechanic to pay this mechanic. And I've even gone through this recently with my company, where they take some of the back end residuals, maybe dilute a little bit of the residual income to be able to power now maybe more upfront bonuses for acquisition and sales, right? So that the typical new person makes more out of their first 30 days or their first 60 days than they typically would. But now where that money came from to fund that bonus came from the pockets of some of our leadership team that was sitting on already, let's say a pre-delivered residual, and now we're down by 20 or 30% overnight because now we got to fund that. So two scenarios, I guess. Number one is that should we just say, hey, you know what, that's the way it is. It is what it is. It's, you know, we got to adapt regardless. Or how do you deal with that? Like, how do you reach in the back pockets of your top earners that have built it and not make them feel bad and disappointed, but also make the pivot to be able to pay the front end where it needs to be?
Okay, let me write a note because this is like a two-part answer. This is a perfect question to explore. So let me put a note so I get both parts of this, because this is really a question that then ongoing. Okay, so here's a couple of things that people need to know as foundation to begin with. Is number one, whatever comp plan you launch with is not the comp plan you're going to stay with, or you're going to go out of business, plain and simple. As your company grows, as human behavior plays out, you will learn nuances about your compensation plan that you will have to change. So that's foundational statement number one. Foundational statement number two is the single most dangerous thing any company ever does is change their comp plan. It's like tap dancing through a minefield to change the plan. When I'm working with a company to change a plan, it's a 2 to 3 year process. It might be a year of planning, and then a year of running simulations and checking numbers and tracking behaviors and running 2 comp plans simultaneously to see what are the effects. And then the third year might be the implementation. And you might have, and so when you say, yeah, and you got to steal from Peter to pay Paul, that's the basic, that would be the third foundational thing, is you have a finite amount of money that can go in the comp plan. Let's say it's 50 cents to use round numbers. So for every dollar that comes in, you have 50 cents you can pay it into the comp plan. If you're paying it to the quadruple diamonds, then it's not going to the supervisor first rank. You're plumping up the supervisor first rank, it's coming from the quadruple diamonds. You got to find out, okay, where is the best place to deploy that money? So why? And then here's the I don't know what number I'm on, the 3 or 4 foundational statement is, you can't have stupid people at the table. You can't have stupid company owners. That goes without saying. But what also has to go without saying is you can't have stupid distributors either. So if I'm launching a company, you hire me and say, Randy, we're starting our new company. We're launching in Europe. And we need to design the comp plan. I'm going to say, okay, listen, I've got to create a comp plan. We need to get you somebody making $50,000 as quickly as possible. You need a bonus guy or a bonus gal. You need somebody there who's like, wow, do you see Mary Smith up there? She's making $50,000 a month. You're not going to put that in the video. You're not going to put it in the catalog. If you go out and promote that, the regulators are going to shut you down. But people are going to talk. People are going to know. And they're going to be bringing their candidates, and they're going to say, you see that lady up there? She's a school teacher. She used to be a school teacher just like you. She's making $50,000 a year with ABC Company now. So if I'm going to use the example of Agile Enterprises, which is a company I built big team with, because they're out of business. So I'm not I'm not recruiting anybody into this, right? But when I joined, they had a couple people doing well, making some money because they had a front-loaded, a kind of a top-heavy comp plan, so that leaders made a good amount of money because they wanted to get to that $100,000, first the $50,000 poster boys, and then the $100,000 ones. And this is because, again, this is not 1980 anymore. This is not 1960 anymore. People aren't going to join and make $3 their first month, and they're not going to even be happy forever for $250 a month. They got to know, if I'm really serious and I make this a career, can I be a baller with this? Is there really the potential that I can build a 6-figure monthly income and above? So when I joined, they had a guy with a cooked leg, and he was only building, had a binary as part of the structure, and he only had to build one leg, and he had brought in someone who only had to build one leg. And when they recruited me, they said, we'll give you a cooked leg. And I said, oh, no. I want exact comp plan as everyone else, because I got to be able to look people in the eye and say, you have the same opportunity as me. So I had to work, and it's not twice as hard. Like if there's a binary element in your plan and somebody has a cooked leg, you don't have to work twice as hard as they do. You have to work 10 or 20 times as hard as they do. Because when they have a cooked leg and they're auto qualifying people with one side, it's exponentially easier than building 2. And 2 versus 4 and 4 versus 8, all the way down the structure. But that was important to me from an integrity standpoint. I need to be able to look people in the eye and say, you got the same deal I got. And so one of those people got to 50,000 before me. Second one got to 50,000 before me. I was just doing it right, the building blocks, blocking and tackling, doing the business the right way. And I got to $100,000 a month first. And I became the #1 income earner. And then I got to $125,000 a month. Then I got to $143,000 a month was my base. Just, not quite 145, but 143 and change. And we were having I was on the distributor advisory board, and we were having a meeting, and I said, okay, guys, it's time to change the comp plan. We've got our poster boys and poster girls. We need to put some more money in the middle of the plan. What I believe the weakness is, so there's 3 stress points, my opinion, in a compensation plan. Stress point number 1 is the brand new distributor. How do you get quick start, fast start, right now money? Stress point number 2, the top leaders. How do you give them what I call golden handcuffs? They say, okay, I've got a free company bonus car. I have this leadership retreat where I'm going to get my annual bonus of $200,000 every year. I've got my monthly check of this month. I don't want to risk that and go somewhere else and start over again. It's golden handcuffs. And then you have the third stress point, and this is the one that most companies fall down on, is you got to say, okay, what is the rank in your comp plan where people are going to have to start buying airplane tickets and traveling to long distance markets to grow their team? Because that's the stress point where they're going to break down and quit, because now they've got up to, they're making $5,000 a month or $9,000 a month, but you start spending $2,000 a month, $3,000 a month traveling. Let's say it's an international company and they're flying, and you're talking about business class tickets that can, even a business class ticket can cost $8,000, $12,000. And if you're working hard and you build it up, you're not looking to take a 15-hour flight from LA to Sydney in row 38, sitting in the middle seat across from the lab. right? You just say, no, I'm not even going to build Australia. Why would I put myself through that torture? You're going to get to the point where say, yeah, when I can fly first class or when I can fly business class, then I'll build Australia. Well, they'll break down. They're not. So I convened this meeting and I'm making 143,000. And I said, we need to change the plan, get me down to around 120,000 a month. And we need to put that month in, that money. And I think the position, the title we called it was corporate director. And I said, we need to increase the income at that point. So we changed the comp plan and I sold it to my other members of the distributor advisory board. And they said, you're right, for the long-term growth of the company, we need to do that.
Yep.
And maybe a year later, I said, okay, at this 120, 125 level, we need to change the plan again. Let me go down to 100,000 and people of my stature, we're going to give up that kind of money. We're going to put a little more in the startup phase and a little more in that builder metric in the middle. And know that long term, that's how we're going to get to 200,000 or 250,000 or however much a month. But we'll never get there if we just go fast now and say, let's get this money by the second year of the plan. I want to be making $200,000 a month. The company's going to plateau because, if you take too much away from the top leaders, you create a leadership drain. Right? If again, you have that 50 cents. How are we going to allocate it? How are we going to deploy that? So if we put it all, so we say, you know what we're going to do? You see this would be some new company will start and they say, we have a unilevel plan and we pay you 60% of everybody on the first level and 50% of everybody you sponsor on the second level and 40% and 30%. And it's very bottom heavy. So they say, we have people making $2,000 their first month. Well, where is that coming from? It's coming from the lady at the top who has a team of 50,000 people and she's only making $30,000 a month. She goes to the Art Jonak mastermind event, or she, goes to some other thing, or she's reading some website. And she's wait a minute. I know my friend there in this company, he has 50,000 people and he makes $65,000 a month. And I'm making $30,000 a month. So you create a leadership drain. And when you create a leader, because they'll eventually say, hey, I love you guys. I love the product. I'm going to keep buying it for the rest of my life, but I can't afford to work here anymore. I'm going to take my toys and I'm going to go play in this sandbox because I'm going to make more money over there. You got to have those golden handcuffs that keep those people from leaving. But you got to balance it so that, so maybe the new people don't make $2,000 their first month. They're not supposed to. If you could get them $200, $300, $500 their first month, that's amazing. And then again, find that stress point at what's the rank in your company where this is and every company has that rank. Okay. I call it the tipping point rank. This is the rank that separates the tourists from the players. This is the rank that separates the part-timers from the professional career people. And you got to make sure there's enough income at that rank to pull people forward where they say, okay, yes, I don't have to still, because at that point they've been in the business for 2 years or 2.5 years. And they're like, I don't want to have to go back to, the mattresses again and sacrificing and scrimping so that I can afford to invest in these long distance lines. I'm just, I brought in all these people promising them you're going to travel the beaches of the world and you're going to create residual income and you're going to have this nice lifestyle. And now I'm going to go back and try to live on, $22,000 a year because I need to grow my team. A lot of people aren't going to do that. They're going to get seduced by the dark side of the force and they're going to end up in another company. So, or they'll get out of the business and then, they'll come back 2 years later when they realize what they missed, but you lost them. And so, yeah, it's, so you got to be willing to change it. And then the other thing is when you change it, I create runways for my clients where and then we have meetings with all the top ranks, and we explain, okay, here's the old plan, here's the new plan, and here's why we're changing this. You have to show them why the plan isn't serving them. Because everybody in the field says, of course, they're changing the plan because all the diamonds are greedy and they want to make more money. Or, of course, they're changing the plan because the company is greedy and they want to take more money. They're taking the food out of our mouths. And if you're changing the plan for that reason, then you deserve that. And you're going to get you're going to get slammed. Most companies do not get shut down by regulators. Most companies fail of their own accord, and a huge percentage of them are when they change the comp plan, right? So if you're not doing it just so the diamonds can make more money or just so the company can make more money, but you say, hey, we actually have done a rational, logical, analytical, deep dive analysis of this compensation plan, and the money we're paying out is not producing the optimal behavior. It's not creating growth and duplication. Here's how we need to change it, and here's why. And when you can make that case, and again, this is why I say you can't have stupid distributors, because this is what happened. If in my case, I was a distributor driving the change, if it would have come from the company, probably they could have never sold it. It had to come from me, a field leader. And that's usually the case. You need a field leader who's visionary enough to understand, hey, I will be willing to take less in this scenario because I believe ultimately I will make more.
Yeah.
And so when you go to make that change, you do that with the top leaders. And then you say, here's what it was, here's what it's going to be. Here's why we're changing it. And they have to see, yes, this makes sense to change it. And then you have to say, and we're going to create a runway for 9 months. We're going to change the plan on January 1st. We're going to run both compensation plans every month for these first 9 months. And whichever one you make the most of in January, you're going to get that check. Whichever one you make the most of in February, you're going to get that check. In March, we're going to pay you 80% of the old plan or the new plan, whichever is better. In April, it's going to be 75%. In May, it's going to be 70%. And so this runway is going to go down because they're going to say, wait a minute, I built my structure under the old plan. And under the old plan, it said, if you build 4 legs wide, you will access all the goodies in the comp plan. Now you change the plan and you're saying, I need 6 lines wide to access all the goodies in the comp plan. You screwed me. You're stealing the food out of my mouth. You're killing me. So you have to, and it's true. They built according to how they're supposed to build. That is your fundamental responsibility as a distributor, is to make the maximum amount of money possible in your bonus check every single month. If you don't do that, you're a crime against humanity. You are hurting the world because you're not living up to your potential. You're being foolish and you're throwing away prosperity. Your job is to make as much money ethically, morally, and legally. Okay, if you start manufacturing ghost distributors and you're putting people under other people to qualify them, that's a different thing. I'm not talking about that. I'm saying morally, legally, ethically, you should be getting the most amount. So, and they will figure out how to do that. Again, it's the nature of human nature. But now you change the rules in the middle of the game. Like, come on, I've been building here for 9 years
Mhm.
I've built everything I put under those 4 lines because you told me 4 lines is how you max out the comp plan. Now
Mhm.
you change it to 6 lines. So that's why I say I'm giving you a runway.
Yeah.
So you have time to change your behavior
Yeah.
so that by the time we drop the runway 9 months from now, or whatever the time frame is, you will still be able to get the optimal amount of payout for the volume that you're producing.
Yeah.
And like I say, that could be a 3-year plan sometimes.
Yeah. No, it totally makes sense. Very, very cool. So here's another thing that's been kind of like, and this is really relevant for me, in full transparency. Like this is something that, and I think it was maybe Mastermind, maybe 2019, 2018. It was definitely before the pandemic. It was one of the last few that where we got to meet live in. I know Art puts together the leadership symposium. And I tell all my people, like, if nothing else, if you're paying for a 3-day weekend or a 2-day weekend and you just get to sit in the symposium, you get your money's worth. I remember 2 years in a row thinking I could literally close my laptop and fly back home and I would have no qualms about the fact that I got my money's worth out of the symposium. I remember one year just taking home something Sarah Robbins said, and just like, it was like the big activation thing for me that year. One year it was a Dana Collins thing. And I remember there was a year you talked about the Bigfoot diplomacy. And
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
I mean, you have obviously, I mean, you've been doing this a while, so you got not only content for books, but content for keynotes. So you got a library of stuff that you can pull from. And in the years I've been at Mastermind now, probably almost 8+ years, have like probably half a dozen of your books. The Bigfoot diplomacy is the one that I mean, everybody could have been out of the room. I felt like you were talking to me, right? So I was just like, wow, this is really interesting, because it's true high level stuff. You don't read that in entry level, how to build your direct selling business kind of stuff. This has to come from people that have been at the top, that have seen the good, the bad, and the ugly of what can happen between the dynamics of the corporate team and the top leadership team and so on and so forth. What happens, and then you brought the term golden handcuffs, and that handcuffs, by the way, like happens, it can happen at any level. Basically, it's the psychological point at which now you're almost unwilling to give up the income for the sake of XYZ. Obviously, in a healthy scenario, it means, hey, I'm committed because I need this to work, and so you have my commitment, which I think that's a healthy form of a golden handcuff. I think there becomes a toxic level where you begin to look the other way and ignore red flags, or you ignore integrity issues or ethics issues, because the golden handcuffs mean you still get paid. So you're going to stay silent to certain challenges and struggles. And so, I'm in a position where, obviously I've served with the top leadership in my company, and, we're all not only top leaders, but we're all great friends. The culture has been incredible. And, over probably the last decade, I've been kind of the go-to guy when it comes to, at least within our family, like Daniel's the guy who can understand the comp plan better than most. He breaks down the mechanics, but not only the comp plan, but he understands psychologically why this works, or why this is healthy, or why this is whatever. For the first time in maybe, I mean, there's been minor issues where I was like, I'm not the biggest fan of this, or I'm not the biggest fan of that, but it's good enough for me to go with it. We get to a fork in the road where that is no longer happening. There's a point where I feel like, what, this to me, everything that's in my body, every bone and hair on my arm feels like my spidey sense says, this is not it. There's something truly ethically, morally questionable about what we're doing here. And I start spitting hot takes, really the contrarian opinion about what's going on. And it's the minority opinion. And leaders that formerly were very trusting of my discernment are now distancing themselves, because they're like, this is a problem, because it goes against what we want to do. And a lot of that, I think, is motivated because the golden handcuffs are at a toxic level where they need this to work because they need their checks to stay or grow. And for them to acknowledge maybe some of my unpopular opinions means that they're going to challenge something that might hurt their checks right now, And so in that, extending off of your Bigfoot diplomacy, what would you advise in that situation? What is your advice to navigate those type of waters where maybe you are in the unpopular, because you, like you said, you were in a part of a company, Agile, where you sat among the top leaders, And obviously they highly respected you. Otherwise, I don't think you could have led the conversation of comp plan modifications. But there was a point where they bought into you. So they leaned on you for that advice and the expertise. What would have happened if, let's say, the whole board, 9 out of 10 or 10 people sitting at that table, all start turning their backs and say, no, Randy's going to take money from us. We got to ignore him. What would you say in that situation? What is that next level of diplomacy in that space?
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack there. And for people who don't know, when the term Bigfoot is, sometimes you have to throw your weight around. Like this is in broadcasting, they'll say the anchor of the NBC nightly news is a Bigfoot, or the person on Good Morning America anchor or the Today Show, they're Bigfoot. They're like, hey, I don't like this new weatherman or weatherwoman. I think they don't respect me. Get them off the show. Mm-hmm. They make $60 million a year. They're getting the highest ratings. If they don't like somebody, boom, they're gone. That was, the big scandal with Matt Lauer, where it was a kind of sexual, whatever you call it, scandal, but that all came out, that was the thing between him and the co-host. And there's people who they call them sharp elbows, who, like, those people don't stay on the show that don't reflect them. And so sometimes, and in our space of direct selling, the top leaders sometimes have to Bigfoot it with the company or with other lines. I wrote a book called DEFCON 1, Direct Selling, as you know, on this kind of thing. That these are the issues, and that's why I'm doing this whole chopping up series. I predict this will be the most sought after series of conversations ever in our space. I think based on this is just the 4th one right now, and people I have lined up already, the next 6, this will be the PhD program of how to become an empowering network marketing leader with a massive organization, strong duplication, high income, great lifestyle. This will be the curriculum for it. Because we can have these kind of conversations that you will never hear from the stage at any kind of event anywhere, So sometimes you got to be the Bigfoot, and you have to stand up for your team. And sometimes this, for me, this was, I had a company I work with where they didn't do the registration process in new countries the proper way. They said, oh, we're going to do, we have this thing called not for retail, meaning people can buy the products and consume them themselves, but they just can't sell them there. And we're operating in that market as not for retail. Well, there are countries that say, well, if you don't retail, then you're just a closed buying club and you're a pyramid scheme. So why don't we close you down? And so I'm like, guys, it doesn't work that way. You have to do the legal work. You have to file the document. They're like, no, we research. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Basically, you're calling FedEx and say, do you deliver to Germany? And if they say yes, you say, we're open in Germany, not for retail. And so they're arguing with me back and forth, and they win because they own the company. I'm the distributor, right? So then I'm traveling somewhere and I get a call from my the wife of my top guy in Germany, and she tells me, hey, he's in jail. And 3 of our other leaders are in jail because the police have come to our house and arrested us because they say that we're operating illegally in the country. So I get on the phone to my company and I say, I'm on the next plane to Salt Lake City. I want the president, I want the CEO, I want every VP in that conference room. I'm landing at this time. Everybody's ass better be in that fucking conference room at this time. And we're going to have a come to Jesus meeting. You know, I'm in there and I'm pounding on the table. My people are sitting in jail.
Yeah.
So that beautiful story you told me, that shit, that dog don't hunt. Okay. We're not leaving this room until we have this situation handled. And, you know, there was, and I will say this, I will be the first to admit that there has been many moments of my life that I have been the most hated man in corporate headquarters. For companies I work with. And the same would be true for clients I work with, right? They would say, there'll be people say, I hate, because I'm, you know, I'm going to call them on their stuff. And I'm going to insist that you have to protect the people who are building the team. There's so many corporate cultures where what they think is work is creating PowerPoint decks. So they have meetings and everybody gets in the conference room and they get everybody on Zoom and they go through slides and they say, and this is, and I'm like, you do know, I had a client, they come up with a weight loss product, a food, a weight loss product. So I'm creating marketing copy for it and the catalog copy. And so, and they're in Canada. And they say, well, we're not, this is not a supplement, this is a food. So you can't, and the law in Canada is you can't make any diet claims for a food. So you cannot say this helps you lose weight, this helps you raise metabolism, this helps with ketosis, it's keto friendly. You can't say any of that because it's a food, not a supplement. I'm like, well, you better get your ass down to legal and get it reclassified as a supplement.
Yeah.
You're asking me to sell a weight loss product and telling me I can't say it helps you lose weight. It doesn't work that way, you know, but they do these PowerPoint decks and everybody's busy and they're working in their cubicle all day. I guess they're, you know, scrolling Instagram or something and they think that's work. I'm always like, you do understand our job is to make it easy for the distributors to get customers and clients. That's what we get paid for. And particularly now, there's so many companies that everybody was bunkered down in the Zoom rooms in their, you know, Chewbacca pajamas and their bunny slippers. And they forgot what work is. They forgot what live events are. They forgot, they haven't been in person with, you know, I had a client, they had a you know, a VP of sales for a country and he'd never met any of the leaders because he was just knew them from Zoom. He'd never gone out and met anybody. I'm like, we can't operate this way. So, you know, but what I will say is I was the most hated guy in the company at that, right? But I became a very loved person at that company because those people, those executives, you can, you know, a guy named Zach Bradley was the co-CEO. He used to call me and say, Randy, you have to stop giving me such beautiful Christmas presents. You're giving me better Christmas presents than my family gives me. My family feels guilty, right? Because I would send them a gorgeous Toomey travel, you know, the luggage might be $1,500 suitcase, you know, to show my appreciation for the work that they do. And I know we're all on the road all the time. So luggage is a big thing. And most people aren't going to splurge on luggage, but that, right? So I give gifts like that, or I send them a thing and, you know, they get to go up in a Soviet MiG fighter jet and break this, you know, sound barrier or whatever. I, you know, find something that, and every Christmas, Everybody in the corporate, they got goodies from me. Everybody in the warehouse facility, they got goodies from me. I like, hey, how many people work in that warehouse? Will you let them know? Don't let anybody leave Friday. Give me the name of a local pizza place. I just want to buy pizza for all the warehouse workers as holiday, thanks from my team. So because it has to go both ways, right? You can't just be the big dog, Bigfoot in everybody being nasty all the time. You have to show people, no, you're not there to beat them up. You're not there to insult them. You're not there to be mean to them, but you are protecting your team. And you're like the mama bear or the mama raccoon or the mama whatever, who's going to protect her kids. So you won't always be popular doing that. The other issue you raise is the golden handcuffs. I forget who said it. Somebody can look it up on the internet and put it in the comments, but it's something to the effect of, it's very tough to change a man's opinion when it's going to affect his paycheck, or something.
Yeah, that sounds so good.
Yeah, because if you're, and my whole philosophy is, I lean very laissez-faire libertarian. I don't want lots of government meddling. I believe in personal freedom, personal choice. That's why I'm in this business. So my philosophy is I don't count other people's money. I don't tell them, well, why did you give money to that charity? My charity is much better. Why don't you, that's none of my business. Okay. I don't mess with other people's income, other lines. I'm not going to say things at events that's going to cause their income to be threatened. I'm going to mind my own business. I'm going to do whatever I can to maximize the success of my team. And I don't count other people's money. And they may make choices that I wouldn't make. I mean, look what's going on in our space right now with all these MLM crypto scams.
Yeah.
It's horrendous. And I have friends, I have dear friends who I believe have made horrific choices in joining some of those scams. And to me, I could break it down in 90 seconds and show you why it's an illegal scam. But for somebody who's been offered a big chunk of money and they need that money, and maybe their house is getting foreclosed on, or maybe they're about to lose their Lexus is about to be repoed. Maybe they don't have money. I don't know. I can't count their money. So I can't, know why they're making the choices they do. So there's some of that stuff you can't control, right? You can just be the example. Model the behavior you want to have. And I am going to speak up. I do. If you've seen, I've got this new newsletter, MLM Confidential, I put out with Jaime Loquier. And everybody watching, whatever you're doing, if you're still here after 2 hours or something, we're in this thing. You are a leader enough. You should be subscribing. Go to mlmconfidential.com. Don't debate. Don't think about it. Don't consider it. Just buy it. Become a charter subscriber. It'll pay for itself 1,000 times over. We're speaking out against this stuff, and we're naming names, and we're really working, fighting for the integrity of the profession. And we just know, I can't know what makes people make those decisions, but I do feel I have a responsibility to speak up. And just as I did in that advisory board, when I say, guys, we need to lower our bonus checks. Yes, you're buying lots of bling bling right now, but we're going to plateau. Because our people, our corporate directors, they're not making enough money, and they're starting to plateau at that level. And we're not seeing the growth that we had earlier. So recognize the comp plan was designed early on to create some poster boys and poster girls, and then it needs to be modified. And pretty much any company after 5 years it's going to be time they're going to need to change their plan again.
Mhm.
After 10 or 15 years, maybe less now. Things are moving faster in the day of tech.
Yeah.
Might have to change more often. There's some time, and again, I get that it's the most dangerous thing we could do.
Yeah.
But the most dangerous thing you could do, if you have a dysfunctional comp plan or a dysfunctional team culture,
Mhm.
the most dangerous thing you can do is nothing,
Yeah.
because they will explode if you don't tend to them.
Yeah. Yeah. Very cool. Very cool.
So let me ask, are you first generation American, 50th generation American? Where are you at in the
So yeah,
sequence?
I think I'd be considered second generation. I don't know. My parents immigrated from
Okay, so
Korea, South Korea. Yeah.
so you're first generation American.
Yeah.
All right, so I was listening to, who was I listening to? I don't even remember, but this funny thing with I'm very closely intertwined with Asian culture as somebody who has dated many Asians,
Mhm.
and Latin culture and Jewish culture and Russian culture and Asian, other Asian, like Indian culture. So, and I think of my friends in there, and so if you're Indian, you're going to be a doctor or an engineer, or you're a bum. If you're Asian, if you're Korean, Chinese, whatever, you're going to be a doctor, a dentist, or a disappointment. I mean, that's what I hear from all my Asian friends. How did you face that dynamic? How does your family feel when you say, I'm going to be a network marketer? How did that work out for you?
I love it. Doctor, lawyer, disappointment. I love how those are like the three choices and nothing else in between. But as funny as that is, it's probably close to reality. I mean, you hear these terms like tiger mom, tiger dads, which, I mean, I think it originated out of Asian American culture, where these parents were obsessively, almost borderline punishing their children to high achievement, right? And so, it's a hot topic about, do Asian Americans or do Asians in general have an advantage, right? Right now, there's the reverse sort of process going on where they're trying to cap how many Asians are getting into these Ivy League schools, despite having the highest scores. And people are saying it's not fair, but it's a hot take, but it's one of those things where, yeah, it's in the culture. I mean, you see it through a lot of achievements, whether it's Olympic sports or gaming or whatever it is. I mean, there's an obsessive quality, and again, you look at how they get to that point, and sometimes you could argue that it's not healthy, right? You look at, for example, the Chinese national gymnast teams, and these kids, they're shipped away literally to gymnast school at 3 years old. They're ripped away from their families. They go to boarding camps, and they're groomed from 3 years old and on to become one day a Chinese Olympic gold medalist. And that's their whole identity. I mean, it's a single path. I mean, talk about commitment. Now, I'm not saying it's healthy, but I mean, I was watching a documentary about professional gaming, because now it's a thing, which is so cool to see, because back in the days, gaming was kind of seen as a lazy bum activity, and now kids are making millions of dollars, getting endorsements, and they're like rock stars. Yeah, I mean, it's insane. But I mean, these Asians, I mean, like, you look at these professional gaming teams coming out of China, and I was like watching the documentary. They have like gaming houses where let's say it's a 5-man team. They live 24/7 with each other. They have a staff that cooks them all their meals, and they're expected to sit in front of a computer 20 hours a day playing games. Now, at some point, there's a line, and for all of us, it's different. It becomes a line of, it was a passion, it was a hobby, to then it becomes almost like this weird thing where you're being asked to achieve and excel at the expense of true joy and happiness. But I mean, that's another thing. So yeah, I mean, my parents were really no different. I mean, I think they definitely were on the healthy side of achievement. They wanted the best for their son. They wanted the typical all-American dream. We immigrated to the United States for opportunity for you. We wanted you to get a good education so you can get into a career path that had a suffix or a prefix, like a lawyer or a PhD or a doctor, something like that. And I went through the first challenge before network marketing because my background is as an artist and as a designer. And so I remember in high school, right around my sophomore year or junior year, I remember telling my mom and dad, I said, Mom, Dad, I think I want to become an entertainment designer. I want to be an animator. And I mean, for Korean parents, that was like, no, like that's not why we came to America. Danny, you're supposed to go to UCLA or one of these nice Stanford or whatever. And they were pushing. And I mean, I was arguing with my dad so much because an artist in their mind was not a path of success. My mom went as far as to say, look at Leonardo, look at Van Gogh. He died and he was broke and his paintings weren't valuable until he was dead. That was like the joke. And so I went through that similar challenge. And I remember telling my parents, I said, Mom, Dad, I want to honor you. Clearly, you've sacrificed a lot for me. I will finish my high school career. I'll study. I'll be studious. I'll make you a deal. Let me do the high school career path. Let me apply to all the universities you want me to go to. And let me also apply simultaneously to the art schools I want to go to. And if I can get accepted to all the schools you would have wanted me to go to, and I still get the acceptance letter from art school, can I then at that point make a career in my own adult life choice to go down the path of art? And that was the deal that we came to. And so I was still very studious. Yeah. And I scored the SATs. I got the GPAs necessary. I got accepted to all the schools that they wanted me to. And I said, now it's, this is the rest of my life. Let me make the decision to go to art school. And so reluctantly they did. And I went to art school. And I shared the stage I think at Mastermind, and it's in my bio, but I graduated art school in 2003, one of the top design schools in the United States, Art Center. And
where's that at?
It's out of Pasadena. So it's right above, this campus sits right above the hills of the Rose Bowl Stadium. So it's really, really cool. And it's a really, really high-end industrial entertainment design school. A lot of top transportation designers are coming out of there. Michael Bay came out of there. I mean, the alumni, Zack Snyder, it's just a really, really great school. And so I graduated in early 2003, and the entertainment industry had shifted to 3D aided design. Everything was going CGI or computer animation. That's basically where the industry was going. And from 99 to 2003, when I went through school, we weren't taught that kind of stuff because it happened overnight. I mean, when Pixar came out, Toy Story and Shrek and Monsters, Inc., it almost decimated the 2D industry. Disney, Warner Brothers, everybody was laying off 2D artists. And so here I was 6 months away from graduation and getting my portfolio ready and realizing no one is going to hire us because all we had learned was traditional 2D design and none of us knew 3D software. And so I graduated and nobody was hiring. I had some random art gigs designing business cards and logos, embroidery hats and screen print t-shirts, making a couple $100 a week, but nothing enough to justify a career. And that's kind of when I was first introduced to network marketing through a friend. And I remember telling my parents, 2 months before graduation, I said, Mom, Dad, I joined a network marketing company, and you should see the look on their faces. I majored in double disappointment. Not only did I go into the art field, which was already a disappointment as it was, but 2 months before graduation, I told my parents, you know what? I'm not going to pursue a design career. I'm going to go into network marketing. And I literally saw the blood just drain out of my parents' faces because my mom and dad, and I didn't realize it at the time, but my mom especially, she tried network marketing companies. I remember she was in the air filter companies. We were living in a 2-bedroom apartment. Me, my mom, my dad, and me and my brother, we'd share a bedroom all the way into high school. I mean, we weren't destitute by any means, but we weren't rich for sure. And my mom would get into these opportunities because in the Korean American community, they'd be like, oh, this is the next get rich thing. And so my mom would come home with 3 or 4 big boxes of air filters. And she's like, we're going to, and it wouldn't work. Those 2-3 boxes would just sit in our living room unsold. And then she got into I think when they they allowed electricity, and she got into this other thing and it didn't work. She did Herbalife for a while, it didn't work. And so not only was my mom scared because I wasn't pursuing a traditional path of success, she tried it and she knew in her mind these things don't work. And so she was absolutely, she was sad. And up to this point, keep in mind, I have a younger brother who's 2 years younger than me, and he was opposite of me growing up as a child. I was always very disciplined. I had a healthy amount of fear from my father. And so I respected my parents. I did everything. My parents expected the highest, but my brother, on the other hand, was babied by my mom, super coddled. My mom, that was her baby. And so my brother around high school started rebelling. He started joining gangs. He was gang banging. He was going to clubs. He was underage drinking. He was going to raves. He was doing drugs. I mean, my parents, they would go to church on Sunday mornings and they would come, wake us up to get ready for church. And I would get ready and they would open my brother's room and it would just waft of alcohol smell because he went out, snuck out, got plastered, come home, and he's barfing into his trash can. And so my mom would always tell my younger brother for all my life, why can't you be more like your older brother? Danny is such a good kid. He's, Sammy, be like Danny, be like Danny, be not like Danny. And then I joined network marketing and my mom goes, keep in mind, fast forward a couple of years, my brother gone into corporate America. He started working for Experian. He was doing really well. My mom would always say to me, Danny, why can't you be more like your younger brother? I'm like, Mom, for my whole life, I was the model and now you reversed it just because of my career path. And our first company in 2000, I think my first company, 2003, we were getting paper checks in the mail and I still lived at home. I did well. I think I had a very, very atypical start to my career. I made good money right away. Really a one percenter story. And so my mom would see these paper checks get mailed to the house. And my mom's English name is Diane and my name is Daniel. And so she always had this weird habit. Whenever I got credit card bills, she would just leave it at my door. She would just, any bills, she would leave at my door. Anytime what looked like a check came in, she would open it. And I would always tell my mom, I would get in an argument. I'm like, Mom, why are you opening my mail? And she's like, oh, I thought it said Diane. I'm like, no, because it only seems to look like Diane when it's a check. And so my parents had my mom being nosy, she kind of see the progress of my checks. And typical, it started with a couple $100 and it started growing. There was a comma in the check and then 2 digits in front of a check. And, at 24 years old, when you're making, again, 8,000, 9,000, 10,000 a month, now suddenly there really isn't a story to say like, why didn't you, or why did you do this or whatever. And it was so funny because during the holiday season, I remember one year, the checks had kind of dipped a little bit because, and again, it was unhealthy, but a lot of our check was based on new activity, new recruition. It wasn't really based on a true residual foundation. And so when the recruiting activity slowed down, the check would obviously dip for that week. And so during the holidays, my mom would see my check dip and she would open it and she goes, Danny, why are you not doing more meetings? Like I'm like, wow, that sounds a lot different from the mom who said, don't go into this profession. And so my parents have been obviously good about supporting it. They do see sometimes me going through certain challenges and they're so supportive in the sense that at the end of the day, I know my parents' heart is they want me to be happy. They, at the end of the day, the money is about, they want the security for my children, for my family. They just, again, I'm still their boy and they just want to make sure I'm protected and I'm safe. And that's the beauty of it. The older I get, you may not fully understand your parents' decisions and choices, but they're rooted in the right stuff. And that's what matters. I have such a place of just deep appreciation because, man, there are lessons I learned from my father. My dad, again, he's a pastor and he taught me like certain lessons early on. And I remember, again, we weren't rich by any means, but my dad he would commit to these tithes, which were like, hey, give your first 10% of your earnings. And my parents were barely making ends meet, but my dad and my mom would cut these tithes and give the checks to the church. And I would watch it angry because my dad wouldn't buy me a Nintendo. And I'd be like, Dad, like we're barely making it. And why are you giving this? Just give less. And my dad, I remember, taught me a lesson, like I think late elementary, says, Danny, if you can't give with a little, you will never learn to give when you have a lot. And I remember that it didn't make sense back then because I was like, Dad, that check, it could buy us a new Nike shoe right now. Like, why are you giving that to the church? And I remember that. But it just taught me these lessons. And I remember my dad became a pastor of the church, but because my dad had a background, he was trained in electrical work. When the church had remodeled and they were putting in their AV systems, my dad's a pastor of the church, but he would crawl through the attic, laying down lines and wires, just dusty and dirty. I don't know, there probably was asbestos in the ceilings too, but he was doing it all, sweating during the summers and doing all this stuff because we were kids, we had no choice. I would have to go to church 4 or 5 days a week with my parents because they would serve on the off days too. And again, I would get so upset. I'm like, Mom, I want to go play with my friends. Why do we need to go with you to church while Dad's crawling through attics? My mom was making food for the elderly people. But it just showed, what I didn't realize was it was laying the foundation of a servant heart. You know what I mean? That no work is above you or below you. That hard work, there's truly a sacrificial heart that I understood from my parents. And beyond them, obviously, whipping their belts to get me to get straight A's and to achieve, and if they probably helped this obsessive quality of achievement in me, so many of these childhood lessons is really the reason why I think they honed me and crafted and refined me into an achiever machine, because they did that, you know what I mean? And so, I'm just so grateful to this profession because it's allowed me to retire my family. I mean, my mom and dad worked incredibly. I mean, they're 70 years old, but they're probably their bodies are aged to 80 and 90, you know what I mean? So I want to honor their time on this earth by allowing them to just create incredible experiences with their grandkids, travel and do that stuff. And that's, and that's why I say the why, we all know that. I mean, as cheesy as the why is, it evolves through your career, and that my parents would lose sleep to care for me. Now I lose sleep to care for them. You know what I mean? So,
right. Yeah. That's why I asked about the Asian culture, because it isn't Asian. Like I say, it could be Russian, Jewish, Lithuanian, Nigerian. There's something about immigrant mentality that people in like a country like the United States, which is so incredibly wealthy compared to the rest of the world. And the people who come here who appreciate that in a way, just like here in the United States, so many people take voting for granted.
Yeah.
Somebody who came here from Cuba, they don't take voting for granted. They understand what a blessing, a gift that is. I love the lesson from your father about the tithing with a little, because it's the same for saving or investing.
Yeah.
You do it when you have a little, you're not going to be able to do it when you have a lot. You've got to create the self-discipline to live on less and plan for the future. So have you seen this Korean show, Physical 100?
Yes. It's hard not to miss it. My wife, and so I'm the Korean in the family. My wife is half Mexican, half Italian. I got the fiery combination, the spice in the household. So we have a really dynamic family. And so my wife and my older daughter fell in love with Korean dramas. And so they were consuming that. And so my Netflix algorithm, whenever I turn on anything, I love watching, I personally love documentaries. I watch obscure documentaries about art heists and how money works and how that's what I love. I love like documentaries. My wife loves K-dramas. And then, obviously as we're going through it, and I've seen over the last decade, Korean culture, especially in the Western world, evolve and change, right, into popular culture. I mean, I remember when K-pop music on, one foot on one side, I have Korean friends, so I know what Korean music was. I visited my aunts and grandmothers in Korea, so I was very exposed to Korean music. I didn't love it, but I knew what it was. And then I remember hearing on mainstream American radio stations, I'd just be driving and suddenly I'm like, that person's singing in Korean. This is on like Kiss FM. This is on like a mainstream, iHeartRadio show. And, I remember when BTS first started coming over and people were like, who are these like guys that look like girls that are winning awards? And I remember there's some jokes and so there was, again, it was exciting to see representation on these major global platforms, Korean culture expanding and penetrating into the Western markets. But then at the same time, a lot of the men are portrayed in a very effeminate way. They're very pretty. Their skincare is, and don't get me wrong, these guys are, skincare is like one of the number one consumer products in Korea, and men and women, they just take absolute pristine care. So they all look beautiful. Their hair is done. They're well groomed. And so there's a stereotype that all Korean men were small, skinny, and effeminate. They're these BTS pretty boys. And then you see Physical 100 and it just absolutely rocks every stereotype you see. You just see these dudes that are jacked and ripped and just cut. And I mean, it's incredible because number one, it breaks all stereotypes. And I think it's just a great way to just let people know. And this is, yes, it happens to be a Korean show, but this is whether you're in Japan or any culture in the world that is misidentified by one stereotype, it breaks the myth. You're gonna find this in every culture, you know. But I just so cool to see it with just Korean dudes just and women just going out there doing these things. But again, at the end of the day, you strip away the physical activities, there's still an achiever mentality. There's a commitment. So I can get behind that mindset. And I'm just like, wow, that's so incredible to see people at the highest level of physicality or the highest level of musicianship or highest level of artistry. I admire that. At the highest level of anything, I soak it up, right? And so, you know, it's fun watching that show. And I just go, wow, that would be so cool. Like, to see an American version of that show, what would that look like? Who would be on that show, you know? And it just, I think there was an episode where they moved that boat.
Yes.
Man, that's so intense, because you saw the balance. I mean, Randy, if you saw that episode, and hopefully I'm not spoiling for anybody watching, but the boat episode, the fastest team wasn't necessarily the strongest team. It was the team that figured out that they needed to kind of lift the boat, and they got the best time by a huge delta. And then the strongest team, which was the overwhelming favorites to go into it, was only off by 2 minutes to the weakest team. And so it's like, it shows you like, it's not always about brute strength. It's about ingenuity and resources and teamwork. And it's just all kinds of lessons just scream at you.
First of all, I love all reality shows. So You Think You Could Dance, singing shows, Idol, X Factor. I love all those. But Physical 100 is my new favorite show. I just love it. And for a lot of the reasons you just said, and just because it is about achievement, and it is about resilience and forcing yourself. We have a similar show on called Special Forces, with Scaramucci's on it and a bunch of athletes. And I can't even watch it. It's just so cringy because they're so melodramatic. It's like a soap opera. And so I watched a couple episodes. I gave up on it. But and that was my fear for Physical 100 was, oh, I hope this doesn't turn into a soap opera where the future episodes, it's going to be, how are they sabotaging the other people on the team, and it's so far, it hasn't happened, I guess. So I'm caught up to the latest episode. There's been really none of that. And with the boat, you know, what I wondered is part of it is they have to throw those, I guess it's 500 pounds worth of kegs. They have to add to the 1,500 pound boat. But I think if they put the kegs in the back, it would raise up the front a little and would have made it easier. But I don't know. Nobody tried that. But that's what I was thinking as I watch. And that's what makes the show great, I think, as I'm watching the rope climb thing. And you're saying, okay, how would this work best? How would you? Because you saw every one of the teams tried at first to just push the boat, and none of them could get it to move an inch. Because the difference between trying to push versus when you pull and you're able to get more power from your legs, stuff like that. There was like maybe the second challenge where there was all these, you know, beefy guys, and then they were going against a team with 4 women on it. And I know for a fact, I guarantee you, before I knew what the challenge was, I said, the team with the women is going to win this one. I just know it. Because I know human nature, that women will approach these challenges in a much more cerebral level and say, hey, what would be, how do we best work as a team? How do we delegate the responsibilities? Who should, you know, yes, this Mr., you know, muscle guy, he's good for this function, but what could the women do here? And that's how it played out, you know. And I think you see that in our business, right? There's a lot of companies where you've had, and we were in the episode with Gamio, we talked about this. With Dana, I talked about it. You know, there's very much been this misogynistic, sexist culture in our business. And now when you see what women are doing in the space and how we didn't tap into those gifts before now is, there's a lot of lessons in that. But I love the physical 100 just because I love the challenge. And I think for everybody in our business, that's just a great show to watch because of the teamwork aspect, because of when they were holding up those 50-pound, I think it was 50 pounds because they do it in kilogram, but I was thinking it seemed like it was 50 pounds. And I'm like, yeah, I bet those big, strong guys, they're probably going to go 20 or 30 minutes. And then it was like 30 minutes, 60 minutes, 90 minutes. I think the winners were like more than 2 hours.
Yeah. So the rocks, the big boulders, the Atlas Challenge, it's 50 kilograms, which turns into 110 pounds, Randy.
Okay, 100 pounds the other way.
Pounds, yeah. So
110 pounds
for
for 2 hours.
It's insane. Yeah.
Even just the hanging one, it just showed you. I mean, it's like everybody was hanging, but as soon as one fell, then like 6, 7 fell, because then it's okay. It's acceptable to let go now.
Yeah.
And when it got to the last 3 or 4, they're just looking at each other and saying, if he ain't letting go, I'm not letting go. If she ain't letting go, I'm not letting go.
Yeah.
So I love that show. Well, speaking of shows, so last Thursday, as we're recording this, I faced the choice. Do I watch the new season premiere of Picard or the early premiere of Ant-Man Quantum Mania or whatever? I chose Picard, and I'm glad I did. It was amazing. Did you have what was your vote in that scenario?
Well, I haven't gotten around to having that dilemma just quite yet, but assuming that I had the choice right now to watch one, I'd probably go with Ant-Man right now. Because again, Marvel things are the first things I'll consume. My recent stuff, sci-fi stuff, I obviously, all the Marvel stuff. I'm diligently waiting for Mandalorian 3 to come out literally in
March 1st, right?
Yeah, March 1st, a week and a half. We're gonna get Mandalorian 3. And then I'm looking forward. I've been consuming a little bit of The Last of Us with Pedro Pascal. He's in that one too, and he's just doing a phenomenal job in that show because it's a very, very unique take on. They don't refer to as zombies, but it's a zombie-like post-apocalyptic show. But whenever I was telling my wife, we were watching it, and we're like, "Oh, this show's so intense." We always say, like, whenever you get what I call fast moving zombies, if you watch the Brad Pitt movie World War Z, that movie had really, really fast zombies. If you remember that scene where they're all scrambling up the wall, where they're just piling their own dead bodies to scale that wall.
In the Israeli border, I think.
Yeah. And it creates an intensity because you watch like other stereotypical zombie movies, they're the mindless, they walk super slow. And it's just like, I could get away from those zombies. But you watch like Last of Us and you're like, if you don't got good cardio, you're over.
Let me tell you, I don't watch Last of Us at 10 p.m. and then go to bed. I watch it at I record it and I watch it at like 7 p.m. And then I watch American Idol or America's Got Talent or something, or go read a book or something to calm my brain down before I go to bed. Because that is, first of all, Pedro Pascal is one of my favorite actors in the world. So I am so happy at the way he is blowing up right now.
Yeah.
But that is a scary, scary show. So my first pure sci-fi, I think the greatest science fiction TV show ever made, my favorite, is The Expanse. I don't know if you saw that. Oh my God, it is, because I love my favorite sci-fi is outer space stuff. Having grown up as a kid on Star Trek, and then later Star Trek, and later Star Wars. But in terms of gritty, adult, real world, amazing acting, incredible script writing, and they have the ship in that show is the coolest spaceship has ever been in any movie or TV show since the Earth's crust cooled.
Wow.
So that one, and then, but I gotta say, the other one that has just captivated me is Andor, because Rogue One became my favorite Star Wars movie. It just did, which I never ever would have bet in a million years, but I love that more than any other. And that this Andor, this is to me the ultimate Star Wars TV show. It's, it's not do we have a Mark Hamill cameo, and do we have a Harrison Ford cameo, and do we have a C-3PO? No, this is gritty, dirty, Blade Runner type,
100%.
dystopian, amazing.
The tone between Rogue One, Rogue One, when it came out, I felt like the big success for Rogue One was the fact that it didn't deal around the Skywalkers, you know what I mean, than the Force. So anything that, let's just generalize it as the Jedi, the Force as a sort of mystical, magical energy. It eliminated the fantasy element. Yes, it's fantasy because it's set in the future, but Rogue One truly was a future war movie. It was Saving Private Ryan in the future. I mean, that's what it was. It was a gritty war espionage film. And so it's like Tom Clancy meets like Star Wars genre. That's really what it was. And Rogue One, I think, one, it gave Star Wars fans, the legions of Star Wars fans, a new dimension of Star Wars to enjoy. That wasn't floating force stuff and, magic and that kind of stuff. But it also turned on and activated new fans. Again, I go back to my brother. My brother, he knows I'm super into Star Wars. He'll watch it, but he has all these jabs. He's like, it's so lame. And Disney's just trying to make a buck and all this fan service. It's all gimmicky. It's all cheap. And he makes fun of it. But he saw Rogue One and he goes, whoa, this is good. And I said, hey, Sammy, like, if you like Rogue One, you need to go back and watch Andor. And same thing, he just fell in love. I mean, critics love Andor. I mean, it's arguably dare I say, better than even the last episode 7, 8, 9. You know what I mean? I mean, Andor is just that good. And that episode, the eye, when you saw the eye where all the things were traveling in the sky, that was like, it's so beautiful. Like, if I could make that my screensaver, I would. So
the effects in that were incredible.
Yeah.
So going more toward personal, professional development, any books, podcasts, anything you're really excited about at the moment?
You know what? Nothing particularly that jumps out at me. I know it's a shameless plug, but I always get my yearly refill with Mastermind. I mean, that's an obvious one, and we just came off this year's event. And I'm looking forward because it sounds like this next year is our first back in-person event. So I'm really, really excited about that. But
for anybody watching, mastermindevent.com. The next one is in Turkey. And I finally conceded to come back, and I will be doing the opening keynote again to keep my streak intact. That'll be in December 2023, depending on whenever you guys are watching this.
No. So again, I get my daily refill there. Then I'll just randomly, I like to lily pad off of like different just topics and different podcasts. Again, I don't think there's any one that it could be random. It could be like an episode of like Joe Rogan's Experience that I deep dive into that and I find some really compelling arguments and insights and experiences there. Then I'll jump to like a Ed Milet thing and again, it doesn't mean I necessarily love all their stuff or all their viewpoints, but there'll be a compelling piece there. And then I'll jump to like, I don't know. I mean, like even every once in a while, there'll be a Gary V thing that I might like really like, but you have to extract and really just find the things that speak to you. One thing that I experienced early on is that personal development is it's in the word, it's a very personal journey to you. I think it's great when you don't know what you're doing. It's great to get book recommendations and a good starter kit and a good starter guide to where it needs to go, because you don't want to get on these weird, random, like tangent paths of ebooks and suddenly you're down this rabbit hole of one way of thinking and then you become radicalized in a thought and then you get cemented there. But I luckily for me, I had good mentors that taught me kind of like the good you know, elementary school personal development books and the junior high school personal development books. And then by the time I get to that point, I felt self-sufficient to explore and learn. I'll pick up a book and go, I don't really like that. Or I'll listen to something and go, I don't really agree with that. Oh, this one speaks to me, or that one speaks to me. And again, I try not to fall in love with one specific individual, because I may not agree with everything that they're throwing out there, you know, because maybe, and you got to just keep in mind, some of these people are out there just throwing out contrarian opinions for the sake of clickbaits or just, you know, watch counts. And so you have to be very careful. Are they tried? One of the things Art always talks about is do they represent a North Star for you, right? Are they grounded in timeless principles, or are they grounded in clickbaits or like just view counts, you know?
Yeah, it's a problem for me when, you know, Eric was talking about, you know, and he really opened up a vein when he said, well, do you have a problem that like finding enough friends and relationships that are into self-development? And I was like, oh my God, now you're going to make me go there, because it's really an issue. It's such a smaller subset of the population that does personal growth. I'm like you, I leapfrog around a lot of different stuff. Big menu to choose from always. I was listening to Gary Vee this morning, literally.
Yeah.
I don't listen to a lot of his stuff because for different reasons, but today he had one with it was like one of his 4D programs where he has 4 or 5 clients and he's analyzing their business, and he's really good. He's such an astute, critical thinker to analyze marketing and advertising. So I was listening to that this morning. So that, and that, to me, that's the second sexiest part of the business. Leverage is the first part, and the fact that self-development, professional and personal, is baked in the cake.
Yeah.
And ultimately, it'll be the first one. It'll be number one over the leverage because of who you become, I think.
100%.
As you progress.
Yeah. I mean, the journey of personal development for me, without any doubt or question, I think the health of my marriage, the health of my family, the health of my role as a husband, a father, as a caregiver, like a lot of that, I know without a doubt is shaped by my personal development journey. You know, I started 10 years before I met my wife. It's been another 10 more years with my wife. You know what I mean? So it's 20 years of this journey and growth that, unfortunately, again, in the real world, a lot of people, what they leave college with or high school with, that's the programming that they live the rest of their lives with, you know? And it's like, if you talked about a comp plan that needs to change every decade, imagine your personal programming and your paradigms and your core values. If that doesn't change, then, oh man, like you can't be running 2023 on 2012 programming. You know what I mean? You got to like,
but they are.
I get that.
It's a very astute observation for you to make that analogy with the comp plans. It's so true. It's just I wrote a blog on it for anyone who's interested. On my blog, just search cement brain of how people fall into those just repetitive, they get in that echo chamber. They've set all their foundational beliefs on every major area of their life. And for most people, the core of those are done before they're 10 years old. And they live to 90 and never re-examine any of them unless they face some kind of mortality or some kind of career crisis or some kind of relationship crisis. Most people never question any of that. Whereas if you bought into the idea of personal development, then you're questioning your premises all the time.
Yeah. I mean, you see that, you know, even in leadership, like I remember starting my career looking up to certain individuals and thinking, oh my God, these guys are like gods. These guys know so much and they're so incredible. And then at some point you realize you get demystified that these people are running off the same program. Again, maybe in 2003, when I first joined the industry, that programming was super hot and fresh and it was exciting. And now by 2015, 2000, you start to see the aging of that program, and they're doing the same keynote. They're still about the recruiter mindset. They're still about front load, you know, whatever it may be. the point is you can see that their OS has not been updated in a while. It's like your phone saying, please update your phone tonight. And they clearly ignored that the last 10 years. And you just start to get like, wow, I don't understand how you're still, how are you not crashing and burning? I mean, they are probably to some degree and not even realizing it. And I remember the most interesting thing, I mean, there's obviously like the beginner tip on personal development, which is there is such a thing as overconsumption of personal development, because I think people get into a space where they mistake personal development for productivity, right? I mean, I call it, you know, whether it's income producing or revenue producing, whatever you want to call it, there are the doing the do's that actually pushes the needle forward. And then there's the busy work, which is not, I don't want to minimize it. It's important to read a good book and listen to good audio to fill the soul and the spirit and your mind. But if that feels good and you mistake that for productivity, and then you lock yourself in your office and listen to books for 8 hours a day, but not make a single phone call or not reach out to a single prospect or not sell a single product, you're in a little bit of delusion that you're going to be out there. And people fall into that trap because they feel good. They get that endorphin hit when they read a new book. They pick up a new podcast, when they find a cool YouTube clip, they get that endorphin hit like, oh yeah, I'm better today than I was yesterday. But what are you doing with that, right? And so that's one unapplied consumption of just feel good endorphins, but you're not exercising that. And then the second thing I remember, I think it was Chris Brady that talked about this a while back. He says that you got to be really mindful that, you know, in the beginning you learn, and because your brain or your mental computer is just empty, your hard drive can just consume and consume and consume and consume. But there comes a point where you start to hit like sort of a capacity, and there's like a law of diminishing return, meaning every new book you read, you're like, it's not going to be like cover to cover revolutionary information. It might be one little bit or one little thing, which is still huge. It's huge. But the scary thing that we have to discern ourselves and be really self-aware about is, are we learning or are we just simply consuming things to reaffirm our already beliefs in things we already know? And I think a lot of leaders get into a place, and I think that's the reason why we've, you know, you see on social media, people have become radicalized to just ideas on politics or ideas on gender or ideas on like anything. All radicalization happens because we only consume information that affirms what we already believe, not information that challenges. I remember Art, he came out to Anaheim and we had dinner with him after an event. It was me and Eugene and a few leaders, and just an intimate dinner. And Art asked us a question at dinner. He's like, Daniel, what thing have you heard or learned in the last 6 months that made you change something about something you always believed in? And it sounds like a simple question. I'm like, oh. And I remember sitting there for minutes just going, huh. And he's like, look, if you're not changing your mind about something you've believed in every couple months, then you're not learning. You're just consuming things that just affirm your beliefs. And that's what I see on social media. People, they believe in something passionately. They only repost and they only share things that basically self-righteously say, see, I told you so. They never post, oh my God, I watched this. This is a really compelling thought. This is a really compelling perspective. I may not fully agree with it, but man, did this get me to rethink. Nobody shows and shares that learning vulnerability, in which I think is so important, because I think in that nuance, that's how we refine into the best versions of ourselves, not doing the same thing that just makes us feel good because we're like, see, I knew I was right, you know?
This is really the essence of that post on Cement Brain that I wrote. And it's funny, so many people in direct selling know all my direct selling work, and they have no idea that I do a prosperity blog. I have an email newsletter every Friday called Friday Philosophy. Every Monday Mojo to kind of set for the week. Then I have the podcast. And this Cement Brain was one of those posts, I think on the Friday Philosophy one. Not only do they create the echo chamber of selecting sources of input that confirms their beliefs, but even the stuff that sneaks in from external sources, they have these eyeglasses that filter out everything that doesn't agree with their core foundational belief. You send them a newsletter that says, look at this blue box, but their perception is boxes are red. So even though there's a photo of a blue box, they see a red box. Their confirmation bias is so strong that it overrides all of their five senses. No matter how you try to challenge that belief, they are so centric, so have such a level of confirmation bias, they just cannot overcome it.
Yeah.
And the older you get, the more likely that is to occur for you.
Yeah.
So at my age, I have to counter program against that so much. I have to challenge myself so much.
Yeah.
I have to be so mindful of, like, this venture with Jaime Lokier I'm doing, this duplicationnation.com and this newsletter. Somebody asked me the other day, how did you go into business with Jaime? Because he was a leader on my team. Is where I met him. He came up and he really, I saw early on, he was a critical thinker. You know, for my team, I create my Jedi Council, and we're the ones who designed the system. What are the tools we're going to use? What are the templates for the presentation? How many events are we going to have? What type of events? What's the agenda for the events? And there are some people you can't bring in those discussions. I saw I could bring Jaime in those discussions because he was a critical thinker. But why I'm in business with him is because he's one of the very few people in the world who will get in my grill and tell me his truth. And I'm a really strong personality, and there's not a lot of people who can do that.
Yeah.
He can send me a message and he'll say, I really hate to say this, gritted teeth emoji, but I think you're wrong, because I don't think we should even be considering that option, because option B would be much better. And here's why. And, people are afraid they're going to offend me I love that. And that's why I'm partners with him, because he's one of the few people in the world who will do that and call me on my stuff.
Dude,
this is what makes marriages work, or any kind of relationship. This is what makes partnerships work, is you've got to find people. The human nature, how the cement brain comes about is we surround ourselves with people who give us permission to stay the way we are. And the older you get, the worse that tendency becomes. So for me, it's just, I'm always challenging myself, always, how do I make sure that I'm looking at this with fresh eye? Talking about books, I'm just reading, this is a book, The Creative Act, A Way of Being. It's by Rick Rubin, who is like the uber music producer. Producers. I don't know his exact client list, but I would say it's the equivalent of everything from the Sex Pistols to BTS, Metallica to Dolly Parton. Rappers, country, metal, pop, Neil Diamond, whatever. And he's this very wise, insightful guy. This is his gift, as he brings the genius out of his artists that he works with. So he took 10 years, 20 years noodling it around, and he decided to write this book. And it's not about the music business. It's just about creativity. He mentions some of, I had this singer in the studio and they thought this, and this is how they broke their creative block and everything. I'm just loving this book.
Wow.
I got it yesterday. I am 224 pages into it. It came yesterday. It's actually, it's probably 400 pages. 404 pages.
Nice.
But I'm devouring it, because that's what that whole, he's kind of, it's like a spiritual book. And by the way, not everybody's going to like this book. I bet a lot of people will hate it because it's very esoteric. It's like the Tao was married to Stephen Pressfield's book, The War of Art. And matter of fact, I literally wrote Steve Pressfield last night and told him, Steve, if you haven't read this book, you have to read it. And he wrote me back this morning and he said, he's, he lives close to me. I read the first galley proof. I gave him a blurb for the book. Wow. I love the book, but I just knew Steve has to see this book, but of course he already had. But it's just brilliant. That combined with, I don't know, War and Peace, because it's not, the War of Art, you read it in 20 minutes. This book takes you hours, but it's really good at, and like I say, I don't think it's going to be everybody's cup of tea, because like the Tao, how many people wouldn't appreciate reading the Tao? They'd be like, is this a religion stuff? I'm a Methodist, or I'm a Catholic, and it's not religion. It's just philosophy. Yeah. But it's a great book for where I'm at in my mental space right now, which is, how am I challenging my beliefs? How am I preventing cement brain from happening to me? All right, well, this seems like a good time to wrap things up. Any final thoughts, final words, anything on your list we didn't cover that desperately needs to be covered, or just what would you tell the folks out there in TV land?
I think everything else is just, again, like I said, this is a start to an incredible series. I think if leaders are willing to open up and be vulnerable enough to share authentic experiences, then you're going to be able to extract information that you wouldn't get on a keynote type of stage, because, in a keynote space, you got 10 or 15 or 20 minutes to prepare forward-facing content that puts your best step forward, right? It's polished content. Here, this is unedited, candid conversations. And, I was joking when we were just kind of transitioning to one of the questions, like, it's the rated R stuff. This is the stuff this is the locker room talk, this is the locker room talk that you don't get to see, and so obviously I was intrigued by the concept when you asked me to be on it. It's like, so it's such a huge honor, by the way, Randy. Like, I mean, considering that you're at this sort of inception point of this project, to be considered even in the first, I know Art was bragging. He's like, I'm number one. And I remember him making a point about that. But just to even be at the tip of, the episodes, I think that's just a huge honor. And I just think, again, as people just really look at this information, hopefully, 80% of it remains evergreen, meaning people can go back, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and watch this and still extract principles. Maybe the economy is in a better place, and maybe some of those points won't make sense anymore 10 years from now. But hopefully, I mean, some of these principles are time tested and true. And I can't wait to see what other people share and see who else you have lined up for this series. So thank you so much, man.
Thank you. Yeah, I got Hilda coming up, and Orion Saleh, Wes Linden, Dana.
Yes.
Like I say, is already in the can.
Love Dana.
Got a bunch of them. They're stacking up like planes over O'Hare. And just brilliant people. I'm gonna try and put out one every week. I think every Wednesday. So for you guys watching, subscribe to the channel. Love to hear from you down in the comments. And look probably for a new episode every Wednesday. So Daniel K. Song. Why is there always Daniel K. Song instead of Daniel Song? Is there some famous mathematician named Daniel Song, or somebody I don't know about that we're separated?
It all started because I couldn't get a Gmail account that was just danielsong@gmail.com. So I had to throw in a letter. So I threw in my initials, and then somehow it just stuck. And so now people refer to my initials. They'll say DKS. So sometimes you'll hear people say, yo, DKS, and it's just referring to Daniel K. Song, or they throw in the K, like it's like Daniel K. Song, like it's an important part of my name, but it's just really because I couldn't get a Gmail account 12 years ago.
Is that initial a Korean thing? Because Daniel Dae Kim, all his friends call him DDK.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, like I said, for me, the origin started because I couldn't get a user handle or a Gmail account. And it kind of stuck. And also, like, growing up, people all refer, you know, when I was a kid, it was always like Daniel San, like the Karate Kid, you know.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it does break up that, you know, but that's about it.
All right. Well, listen, Daniel K. Song, thank you so much. This was as great as I hope to be. I did want you on one of the earlier shows. I feel like there's so many of the mature, let's say, let's leave it as mature, the mature voices in our profession who are on all the stages and the podcasts and the whatever. And there is these other younger generations doing amazing things in the space, and you're one of them. And I want to make sure that people are hearing those voices as well. So thank you again for doing it. This was magnificent.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
All right. Thanks everybody for watching. See you next time. Peace.